Buckle up, Tarnished. It's time to level down. No maiden, no fear. Consider this. If the drug of Elden Ring is in the satisfaction of overcoming tremendous odds, the RL1 run is mainlining that drug, and it has completely changed the way I play these games, because now I am a onebro. Onebros is a subreddit full of people dedicated to not leveling up. Everything else is fair game. Summons, magic, weapon upgrades, Scadutree blessings, just be level 1, bro. All other restrictions are decided by the player to suit the level of difficulty that they want in the run. And level 1 Elden Ring has more freedom of expression than any other level 1 challenge in the series. This challenge can make the game much harder than a normal run, but it could also be easier. It really is in how you choose to scale the difficulty. If you just want to beat RL1 for bragging rights, but you don't want it to be head-numbingly difficult, you can do that pretty handily. If you're thinking at this point, there's no way I could do this challenge, I'm here to tell you that you absolutely can. If you can beat the game on a normal run, you can beat the game at level 1. You can do this. A good deal of people I talk about this challenge with have come under the impression that at level 1, boss fights must go for 20 minutes because you're doing 23 damage a swing. That is not true. In the Souls games, the vast majority of your damage comes from your weapon upgrades and your talismans. Your stats don't contribute nearly as much as you might think. Where the challenge of RL1 comes in is in your margin of error. In a normal run of Elden Ring, you can get by with hit trading. That is, you hit a boss with a big bonk, it hits you with a big bonk, the bigger bonk wins. In RL1, you can't do that. But you can absolutely do much more damage in a well-optimized RL1 run than you can do in a normal casual playthrough with a suboptimal build. To play at RL1, you need to make little to no mistakes in a boss fight. The variability comes in how long you need to keep that up. You can take down a good deal of the bosses in this game in under a minute, even at level 1. But however strong you decide you want to be, you will get to a point where most, if not all, attacks will probably one-shot you. The trick to this challenge is figuring out when to do your damage and how to stay alive until you have that opportunity. In order to figure out your win condition, you need to learn bosses' movesets, and that takes time. But if you take the time, you just may unlock an entirely new way to enjoy one of the best games ever made. If you remember fondly your first experiences playing Souls games, dying endlessly because you didn't know what you were doing, this will recapture that magic. You'll be weak, it will make you feel like a bug, but that is, I think, the purest way to experience this game, to be weak. It is humbling, and I really hope you give it a go. This video is a guide for anyone wanting to take on this challenge, to become a onebro. There are a ton of different options to take on the bosses in this game. I am just sharing ones that worked for me. Others do exist. But before I tell you how to beat this game at level 1, I want to tell you why. If you already know why and you just want to get going, feel free to skip ahead to the next timestamp, but I hope you'll humor me because a good deal of this challenge is in the mind game. I wasn't always into doing crazy challenge runs. I would never consider myself an elite gamer. I never got out of Bronze League of Legends. I can't figure out fighting games for the life of me. I play most games with difficulty options on the default setting. I'm not a masochist. The reason I started challenge runs was because of how I felt after my first Elden Ring playthrough. On that run, I collected everything I could and used it all. I combed through all the collectibles and tried it all out because I am, by nature, a completionist. I get FOMO real bad, especially with Souls games where if you progress too far, you could miss an important NPC questline or an entire area. I am hunting for content when I play these games. No stone left unturned. So if you're anything like me, you came out to Limgrave, spoke to Vare who told you to go up the hill to the big castle, and you did literally everything else before you finally headed in that direction. The issue with all this freedom is that it's very likely that you will finally make it to Margit and be far, far stronger than you should be if you want a challenging combat experience. Margit is supposed to be a tutorial boss. He also teaches you that if you're too weak, that you should go explore in the open world. If you already did, he sort of fails in his job. He's supposed to teach you some of the key mechanics of the game, but if you did what I did, it's likely that you'll destroy him on your first attempt and learn nothing. This is a problem. It is a flaw inherent in the open world design. Different players will experience this fight very differently, and there isn't an easy solution. In Rasputin's Difficulty is Weird video, he talks about the process of needing to scale the difficulty to your own preferred level, and the trouble in needing to do that busy work instead of having the developers scale the game to the experience they want the players to have. He relates it to other games that have complicated adjustable sliders to create tailor-made difficulty settings. And in my opinion, there is a level of self-management that is necessary to fully enjoy the range of options available in this game. You do, in fact, have to create your own adjustable difficulty slider in Elden Ring. You will enjoy the game far more once you realize that and embrace it. Fantasy novelist Brandon Sanderson has a really healthy mindset centered around a very defined playstyle. Here's him on the way he likes to play.
We've got Thog, the High Priest of the Church of the Holy Bonk. Thog does not use magic. Thog does not understand magic. Thog does not believe in vigor. I'm immortal. I just come back if I'm killed.
But Brandon Sanderson hasn't just figured out his playstyle, he's figured out how strong he likes to feel.
Like I look for, in a Souls game, a boss to take me an hour to 2 hours.
Okay.
Because I want to be able to beat a boss knowing its moveset, rather than just running in, bonking it until it dies.
Trying to do this DLC at about half the recommended level. That usually gives me the challenge I'm looking for, because I'm leveling up.
Right.
My character doesn't need to level up. I'm leveling up. Like, fighting those dragons is super satisfying, because the first one that I fought, like, I must have died 50 or 60 times. Then I came to this one, and it's an upgraded one with new moves that I'm not used to. And I built it in, like, what, 3-4 times? I have leveled up way more than my character has. And that feels great. I like that in these games you can pick your difficulty by how much you level up and things.
This is, I think, a great way to deal with the juxtaposition between open-world exploration and combat-focused gameplay. Just because you have enough runes to level up, it doesn't mean you have to spend them. And just because you have found upgrade stones, it doesn't mean you have to upgrade anything. You can keep yourself weak, or you can make yourself stronger at any time. You can play the game however you like. But he does have a line. He says if he's stuck on a boss for 15 hours or so, like he did with Malenia, then he'll use a mimic tier or brute force his way through. That's fine. You don't have to love every boss. I don't. If there's something stopping you from finishing the challenge, you can brute force your way through it to get to other fights you'll like more. When I first finished my first Elden Ring run, I used Mimic Tier for everything, because I found it and realized it was strong, and when you realize that, it's kind of hard to keep it in your back pocket. So like a lot of people, I got through the game with pretty much no trouble until the last few bosses, which took a bit of doing, because I hadn't really learned the game. I face rolled my way through most of it because I was insanely strong. These games are intentionally enigmatic. They don't teach you their mechanics, so you can get your whole way through the game not knowing them if you never had any incentive to learn them for yourself. So when I did finally beat the game, I ended up feeling pretty underwhelmed. I didn't love my first playthrough of Elden Ring. I was honestly a little disappointed, at least in comparison with the other games in the series. I didn't get that satisfaction from overcoming tremendous odds because the odds weren't tremendous, they were fairly manageable. I used the most powerful tools for everything, and it worked pretty much every time. But then I found out about the onebros, and I thought, that's fucked. There's no way. But the more I looked into it, the more reasonable it started to look. And I thought, well, if I want an experience more in keeping with how much I struggled in those early games, why not? Why not at least give it a go? Because deciding to give it a go is pretty non-committal. Starting a level 1 run doesn't mean you need to finish it. There's no harm in trying it and seeing how far you get. So that's what I did. I started a dude, did some prep work and made my way to Margit. And after some time and a bunch of trial and error, I did it. Margit at level 1. That was huge for me. And so I thought, well, why not Godrick? And he was even easier. And then suddenly I'm in Leonia at level 1 when on my first playthrough, I was already level 30. But then soon Rennala was down as well. Then Rykard, and then I'm facing Radahn at level 1 thinking, I could actually do this. I could beat the game. And after a long time, I did. And it was absolutely that feeling that I wanted on my first playthrough. I got that sense of satisfaction that I had missed my first time around when I face-tanked my way through the game. And I did it my way, with my own strategies, just like how Rasputin did when playing The Witcher 3 on the Death March difficulty setting. I figured out my own strategies and learnt the mechanics to cope with the difficulty that the game presented. There were no achievements. I didn't unlock anything. I was intrinsically motivated. I did it for my own sense of satisfaction, and not only was that enough, it was everything. It's why I play video games. And I appreciate the game far more because I've been forced to learn the game and experiment. I now utilize my entire moveset because I was forced to learn due to how hard I'd made the game for myself. This game is very difficult, but it allows you a lot of tools to help you get through it and make it easier. By restricting yourself, you are allowing it to be very difficult. So if you're this far along and you've never done a challenge run of Elden Ring, if you're not a onebro, I'm going to offer you a little challenge. You don't need to commit to a full level 1 run, you can just try it out. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to start a little dude. Go on, Wretch, obviously, give them a weird name and make them look goofy as hell. This is a very important step because if you're going to die a bunch, you're better off watching it happen to a goofy doofus than your handsome, muscular self-insert. It helps you keep a sense of humor about things. My first guy was Bosch, Forbidden Ninja Turtle. Look at this goofy-ass dude. This dude was the Elden Lord. So, you've got your doofus, you're gonna get a couple things. First, grab your horsey, head down to the church and grab your physic. Next, you're going to want to get tiers for your physic. I recommend the charged attack physic and the stamina physic. You can get them both south right by this tree. Using the physic before every fight is mandatory and a really important habit if you haven't already been doing that. It's a huge boost. Charged attacks will be your big punish because it's the best move you have for stagger, which is very important on a good deal of setups. This makes that move better. Stamina management is incredibly important at RL1, much more so than in a regular run, because if you do your big charged heavy and find yourself with no stamina to dodge the next attack, you're done. Having the stamina to be as aggressive as you can be while still dodging everything is really how you start to optimize. Alternatively, you can pick up the Strength Knot tier easily over here near Margit. It gives you a plus 10 to Strength, so it's a pretty good boost to your damage. It's also really handy to wield some weapons you wouldn't normally be able to. Next, you're going to get Radagon's Saw Seal. This is going to give you a bunch of free levels at the cost of taking more damage. I never take this off. There are people who play a more defensive playstyle, but eventually you are going to get to a point where pretty much everything will kill you in one hit anyway, so I just use it and it gives you more weapon variety. But putting aside whatever you want to do later, for this challenge, I want you to use it because it will narrow your margin of error. So grab it. For most of this run, anything in between boss fights, you can pretty much just run right past. One thing you're going to want to practice if you haven't already been doing it is claw gripping your controller. Souls games are tricky because it's not easy to sprint and move your camera at the same time. This lets you do that. It is an enduring quality of these games, like it or hate it. Better get used to it. The other thing that will really help you getting around and dodging creepy crawlies is the jump. Not just jumping over things, but jumping away from. The jump gives you a bunch of distance, more distance than a roll would, and with much less recovery. Jumping away to dodge some moves instead of rolling is actually optimal in a good deal of situations, especially when you're in a hurry. Head on up the ladder. Don't worry about poison if it happens. Grab the half of the medallion while you're here, and then head down this hole. Make this jump. Avoid the big rats. Come down here and grab the talisman. Then you can just let yourself become din-dins. You've got what you came for. Next, we're going to get the rickety shield. Any small shield will do, really, but I like the rickety shield because of the low equip load, and it looks funny. You can buy a small shield over here at this merchant, but if you want the rickety one, head on down here in the Weeping Peninsula and farm these dudes right here. Eventually, they'll drop the shield. We're getting this because you're going to parry Margit. And I'm challenging you to do that because I think it's probably likely that you haven't done that, because I think it's fair to say that a good deal of people like to use a big two-handed weapon when they play this game. I'm challenging you to change it up. The RL1 challenge is all about engaging with the systems and learning them, so learn them. If you've already parried Margit, I don't know, try throwing something at him or using a silly weapon, whatever. So head on over to Margit and use your base starting club with no upgrades. Equip your rickety shield and your saw seal and just run in there. Just go for it. The worst that can happen is you die and pop up right there at that grace point. It's pretty low stakes. But it is going to be hard. It could take you a while, a long while, but that's all right because you will do it. It is absolutely achievable. Just let it take time. If you want to see some advice on how to keep a cool head in the learning process and see what to look for, you can take a look at my learning process videos right here. That's where I offer live commentary in my own learning process and how I cope with the mental game. I'm not going to go move by move in each boss's moveset because a good deal of the enjoyment of this challenge is in the learning process. But if you do want a more in-depth guide, they're out there. There's really only one move that I think is tricky to figure out how to dodge, and that's the sword combo. Lupine's video here explains that pretty well, so I won't repeat it. Don't be afraid to look at how someone else takes on this fight on YouTube. Type XBoss RL1 no hit into YouTube whenever you feel yourself getting stuck on a particular move. There are tons of great challenge runners on YouTube that have uploaded no hit runs that you can study. Slow down the footage and look for that one attack. Sometimes the solution is as simple as rolling left instead of right or strafing instead of backing away. The onebros subreddit is of course also a fantastic resource. There are far more defensive options than just the dodge roll. As mentioned, you can jump away and over, you can parry, later on you can deflect, you can also just sprint. Here are some tips specific to Margit. Every move that Margit uses with his big stick is parryable. When he brings out the big glowy hammer and the knives, they're not, so roll them. This one move though, where he brings out the stick and the hammer, is parryable because the stick hits you first. You need 2 parries to get a riposte, and he'll always follow up the first parry with one of 2 attacks, and both are parryable. You have enough time to get 2 R1s in between both to keep up the stagger. Speaking of staggers, obviously there's not a visible bar, but that doesn't mean you can't get a feel for when it's coming. It isn't random. So if you get 2 charged heavies off in a reasonable time frame, it's likely that one more big attack is going to do it. Knowing this allows you to be much more aggressive and go for attacks when you know it will stagger. In Phase 2, he's a lot more dangerous, so it's best to stay at the mid-range and then go in when he's got his big stick in the air for the parries. If you really don't want to parry and it's making you frustrated, just two-hand the club, and anytime he has a massive delayed attack, walk around to his butt and give him a charge. You can even play around with Barbaric Roar. This will make your heavy attacks even stronger, and it's really good against Margit because he takes so long to recover. You can also swap from one-handing to two-handing and back again for specific punishes if you want. Getting comfortable with that is definitely going to come in handy for some fights down the line. You will die a lot, but you will get better. As Brandon Sanderson said, you will level up, not your character. Sometimes it might not feel that way, and maybe you want to take a break if you're getting frustrated, but try not to get frustrated because, again, the stakes are pretty low. He is unfair. He's supposed to be unfair. The terrain makes it difficult. He has traps where you think it's safe, but it's not. He chucks knives at you when you try to heal, and you're making it even more unfair by playing it as you are. You're allowing it to be unfair. And that makes it so much more satisfying when you do get him down, because you will. Or you won't. If you give it a go and you find that you're getting really frustrated to a point where it's not fun anymore and you resent the game and you resent me for telling you to play like this, well, stop. No one's holding a gun to your head. Go outside and smell the roses. Play a different game. This challenge isn't for you, and that's okay. There's no harm, no foul. But if you're having trouble, you can also just upgrade your weapon, of course, if you really want to. You can also change your weapon. Margit is weak to slash damage. He's got low elemental negation for everything but holy, so anything that has split damage will be pretty good, and pretty much any status effect is great on him. If you're still having trouble, head in to see Patches, give him a good knock, and then buy the shackle off him. This will stun him twice in phase 1 and give you a really good head start. However you get him, congratulations. Because if you've managed to complete that challenge, you are absolutely good enough to beat the entire game at level 1. Now, it's time to show you how. Anyone who has played through the game more than once knows all about this step. You need to get all the stuff you want for your build. This is the setup, and it can be a slog. Depending what and how much you want, this could take you a while before you even kill anything. I'm going to run through a ton of options that are good for RL1. It's not everything, and you don't need to take everything I recommend. Just take what you need. First, let's chat talismans, because you've got another slot with Margit dead and buried, and you've got some options. You can pick up the green turtle talisman with a stone sword key. As I mentioned, stamina is really important. Using this talisman can free up your physics slot. Alternatively, you can also pick up the green turtle shield. It gives you added equip load, but you don't even need to have it equipped to have the benefit. You can just have it on your back and be a cool turtle. Next, the axe talisman is great because it can stack with your cracked tier for charged heavies. You can also pick this up without killing anything. Lastly, I recommend the blue dancer charm. If you plan on being naked or close to it, this is your best option. Most things are going to kill you in a couple hits anyway, so sacrificing your armor doesn't really matter. Light roll is going to be very handy, so blue dancer suits that well. Just be aware that the benefits start to not be worth it at around 15 equipment load, so if you're using a heavier weapon, it might not be worth it. You will have to kill this giant to get it, but it's pretty easy. Just charge heavies at his feet, and you'll get him in no time. The other really helpful thing to start is to get the bubble tier. You can get it from killing the Tree Man and the Weeping Peninsula. This is amazing for this challenge because unless you're playing defensive, everything is probably going to kill you in one hit. This essentially gives you an extra life if you are going glass cannon with no defensives. You probably won't need this now because we can still take some hits without issue, but eventually this will be really helpful. If you're itching to get going right away on this challenge and you don't want a crazy long setup process, head to Castle Morn and go see Edgar. And what you're going to want to do is end his life. Just end it. Get him out of here. Because he gives you a Banished Knight's Halberd at +8 right off the bat. That's huge. The Halberd also does Pierce and has an amazing moveset for poking enemies at range. It will also save you running around and getting upgrade stones, so if you want to take on Godrick right now, you are more than strong enough. But before we head there, I'm going to advise you to give yourself some more options. Here's how to do that. First, grab enough stones to upgrade your basic starting club to +6. Next, we're going to skip Stormvale Castle completely. If you don't already know this, you can head down this little pathway here and completely bypass both the castle and Godrick. Godrick is actually completely optional in this game. All you need is 2 Great Runes. Where you get them is completely up to you. I will come back for Godrick, but for now, there's things that we need. We want to go all the way to Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel and sprint to the boss. The Crystallian is super slow and weak to strike damage. So choose your moment, and then get a big jump heavy or charge until it's staggered. You get the Smithing Stone Bell from this, which gives you unlimited Smithing Stones 1 and 2 from the shop, so you can upgrade as many +6 weapons as you want. And that gives you a lot of freedom to try different weapons without locking you in. One thing you should really keep in mind at all times is damage type. Just as strike damage was extremely strong against that Crystallian, other weapon types are similarly strong against other bosses. If you wonder why I'm doing so much damage in some of my videos, it's usually because of this. So I'd recommend you pick up one option for strike, pierce, and slash at all times. Standard is an option too, but there's not many bosses that are weak to that specifically, so I'd stick with those 3. Let's talk infusions and Ashes of War. You're going to want to pick up the Whetstone Knife, and you can also pick up the Red Hot Wet Blade all the way in Caelid where the festival is. Head there now before the festival starts if you don't want to miss it before things kick off. Elemental infusions split your damage. And although the base damage is really high, negations and defenses are taken from both sides of the split. But if a boss has low negations, then split damage is a really good idea. You can boost your elemental damage with things like the Scorpion Charms, which you can pick up later, or the Elemental Tears, which you can find from the Tree Men. These are incredibly strong for bosses with elemental weaknesses. You can also pick up the Glintstone Wetblade right now in the Academy, which is really helpful all the way through the game, but you will have to take out the big doggy in the Academy. This guy should be totally fine with a +8 weapon, and his attacks won't one-shot you. Pick your moments when he does a big jump on you and find the moves that look safe but aren't. It doesn't have much health at all, so it's absolutely doable. He can be pretty mean with how he combines ranged magic with bite, but you should be able to get him after a wee bit of the old trial and error. You can pick up the Wet Blade right here after you get him down, which will give you not only magic infusion, but also cold. Cold is crazy good all the way through the game. While you're here, you can also get a very helpful armor piece. Not this one, that's mine. Spring over the rooftops and fall down here, and you get this headpiece, which gives you extra dexterity. This comes in handy to wield some weapons at the cost of a little bit of max health. In terms of other wet blades you can get the Iron Wet Blade, and that can be picked up when you get into Stormvale later, but for the most part, standard infusions are going to be better than heavy or keen most of the time because we don't have the stats for scaling. The other wet blades are locked off from us for the minute, so those are our options for now. Ashes of War. You have some really great options. First, Golden Vow. It's crazy good, it's easy to get. It gives you a 10% buff to all your damage for a little under a minute. And the best thing is, it's an aura buff, meaning you can buff yourself with it and still get the buff if you use a different weapon. So one of the best strategies in this game is to put Golden Vow on a dagger just for this purpose. It frees you up to use a different ash on your main weapon and still get the buff. It's a no-brainer. Another big one is Crag Blade. This one gives an increase to your damage and stagger damage. It's also a weapon buff, meaning it stacks with Golden Vow, making it strong in pretty much all situations. While we're talking buffs, Flame Grant Me Strength is an incantation that is easily picked up near Fort Gale and increases both fire damage and physical damage by 20% for a short period. This is a body buff, meaning you can combo it with both Golden Vow and Crag Blade for a massive buff. Alternatively, you can use the Blood Boil Aromatic if you find the recipe in the Shaded Castle a bit later. This is a 30% buff for a longer period. The Uplifting Aromatic is also a really good option to be more defensive. It'll only give you a 10% damage boost, but it will also help you absorb a hit. But you won't be able to obtain the crafting materials until much later on in Nokron. People swear by these, but I don't have the patience to farm them, and I never feel like I need the damage enough to hunt them down. But if you want to be as strong as you can possibly be, these are good to pick up. To pair with Flame Grant Me Strength, you can use the Ash of War Flaming Strike. Flaming Strike is incredibly good for enemies weak to fire or with low negations. This not only does a very strong initial attack, but leaves a buff that increases all future attacks for a set time. My final 2 recommendations for Ashes of War are ones that I would absolutely recommend to anyone that wants an easier time with this challenge. You do have to kill a couple bosses, but it is absolutely worth it. These are some of the buggiest enemies in the game. Their horses are so jank, and they will frequently run away and just forget about you. He'll give you Giant's Hunt. If you saw my earlier video, you maybe saw me talking about the combo potential of this move. This move is crazy, especially against NPC enemies. You can chain these infinitely until either you run out of MP or they die. This is, without a doubt, one of the most important things to pick up on this run. It will come in handy. In order to help your MP consumption and keep you giants hunting, you can pick up the Asher War Scarab near the bridge to Godrick's Great Rune a bit later. You can also pick up the Carrion Filigree Crest Talisman from EG. If you come here at night, you'll find another Cavalry Knight. He can be finished off in exactly the same way. He's tough, but keep at it. After you defeat this one, you'll get Ice Spear, and this move, it can really carry you. If you like a ranged playstyle, this is crazy. I went straight to Gowrie and got Commander O'Neill down for the Dexterity Heirloom. It's wild. Put it on Cold Infusion and chuck these at range, and not only will it do crazy damage, it will stagger bosses really quickly. It's fantastic if you don't mind a little cheese. Before we talk about which weapons to use these ashes on, let's say we want to be even stronger. Let's get the other half of the Dectus Medallion, talk to Height beforehand if you want to do his questline, which you should do for important upgrade stones later. Kill the Knight on the way up for Bloody Slash, that's going to come in handy, then go up the big lift. Head all the way over to the sealed tunnel to get the Smithing Stone Bell 2 very easily. This is unlimited stones all the way up to plus 12. But the real power spike this early is Somber Weapons, and Somber Weapons are much easier to upgrade because they have a max of 10, not 25, and they only require 1 stone per upgrade. The trade-off is, of course, they aren't infusible. That makes them really good early in the game, but less so later. That being said, less good doesn't mean bad. Some Somber Weapons can comfortably take you all the way to the end of the game if you want. If you want a Somber Weapon, you can head up from the Crystal Tunnel past the secret door to find EG. And EG can give you Somber Stones all the way to plus 4. If you want even more power than that, head back up the lift to Old Atlas Tunnel, and you can find some Somber 5s and 6s around there. So let's talk about weapon options. There are a ton of options at RL1. I'd recommend focusing your higher level stones on 1 infusible weapon and 1 Somber Stone weapon of a different damage type. That way you always have a little bit of variety. For Strike, the meta weapon that a lot of first timers on this challenge use is the Iron Ball. You can pick it up by killing Boggart. Make sure to do the Raya questline if you want the teleport to Volcano Manor. If you do want to kill Boggart, keep in mind if you do him in here and not later, you'll lose the ability to buy unlimited boiled crabs. Boiled crabs are a massive boost to your defense. It's a good idea to keep him alive until he moves on to the next location. These are amazing weapons. Their power comes from the charged heavies, which are super fast and do massive stagger damage. You can absolutely cheese a bunch of bosses with this just by spamming this move. I would, however, recommend having another option in your back pocket. They are amazing, yes, but the range of them is incredibly limiting. With some bosses you do tend to whiff, even when you're directly in their face. Personally, I find these weapons really frustrating, but they are undeniably very strong. I, however, tend to prefer the Stone Club because it has a more varied moveset and is also really, really strong. You can get it from farming this guy near Celia Hideaway. For a somber weapon, I'd highly recommend this Goofy Finger. It may look silly, but it's actually incredible. And you can get it very easily. You may need some extra flask charges to make your way down here, but just spam roll and open the chest and it's yours. This is strong all the way through the game. It does great stagger and it looks funny. It's perfect, one of my favorites. Slash damage is amazing because a good chunk of the trickiest bosses are weak to it. The Uchi-Katana is what I used for my first level 1 run. Unsheath is a fantastic Asher War for pretty much every situation. It also has native bleed, and it can be gotten really early without fighting anything over in the death-touched catacombs. The Grave Scythe, great high damage weapon that you can use with low stat requirements. This is a great RL1 pick. The slash weapon I recommend most, though, is a weapon I'm sure you're familiar with, the Bloodhound's Fang. It's a really strong pick for somber weapons, and you can take it all the way to the end of the game pretty handily. It does have a high dex requirement, but you can use it just fine with the Glintstone Mask. The weapon is incredibly strong for several reasons. First, crazy base damage. Also, it has bleed. Also, the Asher War gives iframes, making it essentially a counter. Also, it has a hidden 10% buff to jump attacks. This weapon is nuts. The craziest thing is it is one of the only somber weapons that can be buffed by greases or by blood flame blade. You do need a bit of faith to use it, but you can get that from a couple armor pieces that are really easy to get. This destroys a good chunk of the bosses in the game and is an incredibly strong option to take on this challenge. Pierce is really good. Pierce damage does extra damage when you are countering an enemy that is mid-combo, which ideally you'll be doing a lot. It can be boosted even further with the Spear Talisman. If you are prioritizing your stones on one damage type, Pierce is a pretty safe bet. The Antspur Rapier is near the Shaded Castle. You'll have to kill an NPC to get it. It has Native Scarlet Rot, which is a fantastic strong damage over time effect. You can put Bleed on it for a combination of burst and damage over time, but what I like to do is be a complete degenerate and put Poison on it for double dot damage. You can also pick up the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation in the Seethwater Cave, and it stacks really nicely with some tools we'll get later on. Clayman's Harpoon is one of my favorite weapons in the game. You can find them down the well from these barnacled bozos. This weapon is really unique because it has native split damage, but it's infusible, meaning if you fuse it magic or cold, you're getting extra damage. That makes Clayman's Harpoon one of the best weapons for a cold infusion and a fantastic option for Ice Spear. If you want to play a patient ranged playstyle with Ice Spear, this is the one. But the obvious Pierce choice is the Serpent Hunter. It's fantastic because it has no stat requirements, meaning you don't even need Soar Seal to wield it, and it has crazy base damage. To get it though, we're going to have to do a couple things. Even if you don't want the Serpent Hunter, if you do want to get as strong as you can early on, you're going to want to follow these steps. First, you need to get to Volcano Manor. While you're here, if you do the first contract, which you can do pretty easily with a bit of Giants hunting, you can get Assassin's Gambit from Bernthal here. This is incredibly helpful as it allows us to stealth past enemies, which is really good for navigating certain areas. Head into the Legacy Dungeon and sprint past everything. You can use Assassin's Gambit to help you out, but it's pretty easy to unlock the shortcut if you follow this path. Once you have, we're ready to take on a pretty tough customer, the Godskin Noble. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can fight him for real for the extra challenge, or you can cheese the hell out of him. If you want the challenge, I recommend that you parry him. This can be great practice for the Godskin duo fight, which will come up later. You can use your Rickety Shield parry if you want, but there are a couple other strong options that will make the process easier. You can find Golden Parry over here. You need to sneak up behind on the rooftops, but it's a pretty easy grab, and Golden Parry will allow you to parry at range at the cost of MP, so it's a great option if you want to play a bit safe. The option I really recommend though is Carrion Retaliation. Sprint past all the fingies to find Loretta. Loretta is a really good fight to practice your parries on. She isn't able to be riposted after a parry, but she'll be stunned long enough to get a big charged heavy on her. Many of the horse riding mini-bosses like the Draconic Tree Sentinels have a similar moveset to Loretta, so it's great to practice on her. Loretta is very weak to lightning. You can pick up the Asher War Lightning Slash from a Scarab near Lane Dell. This one's great for anyone weak to lightning as it works similarly to Flaming Strike with the extra base damage. She can sometimes combine her ranged and melee options and it can be tricky to dodge, but for the most part, Loretta is fairly reasonable. Once that's done, you can head up and meet my wife if you want, then head down over here to talk to this weird dude. You can buy the ash from him here. Carrion Retaliation is amazing because it gives more parry frames than the regular parry with no cost to MP. It also allows you to reflect magic for pretty respectable damage. This is really good on Noble because not only can you parry most of his attacks, but you can reflect his fireballs, which he will do a ton at range. He's pretty tough, and it's the first challenge where anything he does probably will one-shot you. Taking him on at this point, as we are, is completely optional, obviously, but it's still absolutely doable. At half health, he's going to explode, so back off. Then what you're going to need to do is to get behind a pillar. This part's really annoying, because if you choose a pillar that is too close or too far, for some reason he'll go through the pillar, killing you. It can be really frustrating and totally janky. Let it be. No game is perfect. This fight's a weird one. It's still absolutely doable. While he's rolling like this, you can, if you're very careful, get some easy damage off him. You'll have to be very careful which moves you do this with. Jump heavies are good because they typically don't move you forward. That's pretty much all you need to beat this guy. And if you're wanting to get as strong as you possibly can be, as early as you can, this is how to do it. But if you're having a great deal of trouble, you can absolutely do this the easy way and cheese the hell out of him. The Noble is really weak to sleep, so we need sleep pots. You can get a recipe from a cookbook in a graveyard in Limgrave. To make them, you'll need cracked pots. You can purchase some from Kale and find 3 in Jarburg, which should be more than enough. The next thing we need are the flowers, and this is the big thing with sleep pots. You can find these flowers really easily in the open world, but they don't respawn, meaning they are a limited supply. And that can make using sleep pots pretty stressful, because we're going to need a stockpile for when we take on the far more menacing Godskin duo down the line. The good news is that if you have access to the DLC, you have a new, much better option, which is unlimited and thankfully takes the pressure off. Get a slash weapon and Bloodflame Blade. Bloodhound's Fang is the easy option. I went with the Claws for no other reason than they looked cool. Chuck a pot. 1 good hit should be enough. It's a good idea to chuck it after he throws a fireball. Once he has that purple line through him, he's good to go. Just charge heavies, he'll stagger, but just keep charging. At half health, pot him again, go back and do the same. And it's done. It's easy. Your biggest roadblock to becoming overpowered super early, and he's dead. You can also do the same strategy with the Godskin Apostle if you want Millicent's prosthesis. You'll have to get the item to continue the questline from the Shaded Castle first, which you can do pretty easily without killing anything. But if you do, you can potentially get an amazing talisman, which gives you 5 dex and a multi-hit buff. You'll just have to do a very bad thing, so I leave it to you. Back to Volcano Manor, it's now a clear run to the Serpent Hunter. But before you do, you can pick up the Dagger Talisman. That'll boost your critical damage. You can also find Royal Knight's Resolve, which is a fantastic ash for when you really need to pick your moment and do 1 massive attack. But the real reason we're here is to grab this Somber Stone 7. It's really important because it's the only stone at this level that we have access to without getting any great runes. And now that we have it, we can get insanely strong. Grab the Serpent Hunter, and if you want, you can upgrade this weapon all the way to 9 right now. Grab 8 from the Scarab and Kaled, and then 9 here, done. Almost max. We'll get to number 10 very soon, but first we need to actually get a great rune. Before you leave Kaled though, you can also get some pretty high regular smithing stones here as well. Head to Stormvale and talk to Old Mate, but ask him to open the main gate. This will give you a faster path to the boss, but it's a bit tricky. If you have Assassin's Gambit, you can stealth your way past to this grace point, or you can absolutely just sprint past everything. You may just have to do some tricky swervies and spam roll, but you will get it eventually. Worst case scenario, you could always just take the normal way around to the side, but that's also a little hairy. Before you head into Godrick, you can pick up this very helpful weapon. This is the Misericord and has the highest crit damage in the game. It is very light and easy to pocket as a sidearm, meaning you can use your big old Serpent Hunter or whatever weapon you've decided to stick with for now and stagger the boss. Then swap to the Misericord for big riposte damage. This is a really fantastic strategy, and if you really want to optimize your damage, it's a great thing to try and get used to. Finally, you can grab the Claw Talisman. This talisman gives you a damage increase to jumping attacks, and it stacks with the jump buff from Bloodhound's Fang. You can stack it even more with the Raptor set from Sage's Cave for a further 10%. This is extremely strong. We're good to go. Setup phase, for the most part, is done. Finally. I know that was long, sorry, but that's Elden Ring, man. The setup phase is a big part of the game and especially important at level 1 to give you the most options. So now that you have all those options, let's use them. Let's take a look at Godrick's resistances. He's pretty weak to all damage types, but has good negations for elemental damage. That means split damage isn't the best idea. That being said, it's not terrible. This doesn't really matter that much at this point in the game. He also has really low status resistances, so poison and cold are great options. If you followed this guide and played from home, you've already faced challenges that are much tougher than Godrick. If you did Margit with no upgrades and parried him as I suggested, and you're sitting here now with a +9 Serpent Hunter, it's going to be a lot easier. When Godrick phase changes, he will do this super long animation where you can just wail on him. He will take less damage at a certain point and you'll want to move out of the way because his downswing can hit you. When second phase starts, you can sprint right up to him as he's spraying his fire and charge some heavies. With a stronger weapon, this can pretty much skip his second phase completely. Godrick has a lot of get-off-me attacks. The most infamous one, of course, is the Storm Assault move. He'll have a lot of moves that look like big punishes, but this move is very fast, so if you've only just finished a jump heavy and he starts that attack, you are probably going to get hit by it. It's best to pick your moments, get one big hit in, and then get out. There's a really good technique you can practice here that will help you all the way through the game. Attacks in this game are based on positioning. So if Godrick starts his combo and I run out, if I run far enough away, he will stop, because otherwise he'll just be swinging at the air. But if I run out and then run back in a bit so that I'm close enough to make him finish that combo, then he will have less time to start his next attack. So instead of rolling out, try sprinting. Often you'll not only cover more distance, but have more time to get in with your own punishes. A jumping attack after a sprint is much, much faster than one after a roll. Your big punish windows are when he jumps on you after Storm Assault. You have more than enough time for a charged heavy here. When he does I command thee kneel, you can jump the final shockwave for a big punish. In the second phase, you can jump heavy the second and third shockwave. Other than that, Godrick is pretty simple. He's still an Elden Ring boss though, and you're level 1, so if you are having trouble, give it time. This game is known to be hard for a reason. Let it be. You will get him though, and when you do, it'll feel pretty damn good. Great rune secured, and you are still level 1. Now that Godrick's done, there's a few things that we can do. At this point in the game, it is a good idea to knock off some side quests. First off, Alexander, you can either grease up this big boy and follow that quest line to the end for that talisman that gives you a plus 15% damage to Ashes of War at the end of the game, or you can kill him now to get the one that buffs them by 10%. You can also do Rogier's quest line if you like. He'll eventually give you the Spellblade set, which will give you a nice boost to some Ashes of War. And you'll also want to quickly pop into Fear to make sure she starts to get out of the round table hold if you want to fight Fortissax later. Don't forget to eat the Baldarkan Blessing so you don't have that health debuff. I see this everywhere. Take that consumable, rest at the grace point so it goes away. Next is Vare. After Godrick, he'll move to the Church of the Rose in Leonia. First, he'll give you some fingies and you'll need to invade. Because you're level 1, PvP might be harder to come by, and you'll need to invade 3 times. If you can't find anyone, or you're not playing with online enabled, you do have another option. Head up to the plateau and find the summon sign over here. Each time you take on this fight, you'll use up one of those consumable fingies, meaning if you die too many times, you will have to hunt for some more. And this is where Giant's Hunt comes very much in handy. You've got the Great Stars weapon, which is a fantastic Great Hammer with native bleed. You can power stance this weapon with a second Great Stars in a chest nearby. Then, you'll need to speak to Vare to proceed to the next step. You'll need to go to the 4 Belfries to head back to the start of the game to advance the quest further. You will have to take on the Scion here, but he should really be no trouble with an upgraded weapon. Make sure to get big punishes in when he's phase changing. Once he's done, head on back to where it all began, get a bit of blood on your napkin, and before you head off, get the item needed for Nepheli a bit later. Then head back to Vare to finish things. You'll be rewarded with the pathway to Mohg. You can get some high-level smithing stones around here, which are important to pick up, but what we really need is through this cave. You'll need to open this chest in front of this massive crowd. You'll probably die, but if you do, it'll still be open, so you can just run back and grab the contents and die again. You'll be rewarded with your final Somber Stone, meaning you can completely max out your Somber weapon right now if you wanted to. You'll definitely want to do Yura's questline. It's pretty simple with a bit of Giant's Hunting, and it will reward you with Raptor of the Mists, which I really recommend you give a go if you haven't already. You can follow that questline to Altus and finish this incredibly annoying NPC off. Watch for her dragon roars. She'll give you a very important tier for Mohg down the line. The last questlines I'd recommend you take on now are Nepheli Lu, and if you haven't already yet, Kenneth Height. If you finish both these questlines, you'll eventually get some max level ancient smithing stones to upgrade later. You won't get them until Morgott, but it's not a bad idea to knock those out now that you have that item to advance the questline. You'll also get 1/2 of the Haligtree medallion while you're here, and that is necessary if you are doing an all remembrance run, or you want access to some of the extra resources in the consecrated snowfields. While you're here, head outside and find the Scarab Beetle. Kill this guy for Vow of the Indomitable. This is going to help us very soon. Last thing you might want to do is you can head through this cave to visit Latena to again set up another max level stone for later. And that's that. We're ready to get our next Great Rune. If you're not worrying about an all remembrance run, you only need 2 Great Runes to progress the story. We've already got 1 from Godrick, so that leaves Rennala, Rykard, and Radahn. Of these 3, I'd recommend Rennala or Rykard for now, because Radahn will be easier to get down with the extra talisman slots we'll get later. Of these 2, Rykard is a much more fun fight at level 1, I think, but Rennala can be much more easily melted. I'll go through them both now, pick whichever you fancy. Rennala is really weak to every physical damage type but strike. She's also weak to all status effects but really strong against magic, which suggests cold isn't a great option. The difference between this fight and Godrick is that Rennala is infinitely more annoying the longer the fight drags on. You'll get a certain amount of time after you pop 3 golden bubbles and Rennala falls down before you need to back off and wait for your turn again. This can really extend the fight time out, which is a problem because this phase gets really lethal as things start to fall from the sky and you start catching books to the side of the head. Not to mention, she has the worst run back out of any of the Remembrance bosses. It's not bad, obviously, in comparison with the other games in the series, but it's still the worst, so something to take into consideration. Unless you're going specifically for a low damage run, I'd recommend upgrading your weapon enough so that you can get it to phase 2 in at least 2 cycles, if not in the first one. Or you can just use a combination of status effects to get a massive burst of damage. In phase 2, she'll always start with this Comet Azure kind of move. Just head right in her face and charge her heavy. It'll go right over your head every single time. Keep on her and poke with quick R1s to interrupt her spells. You do need to respect the summons. Well, some of them. The troll and the dogs aren't so bad. The dragon actually isn't so bad either because it will pretty much just breathe fire right over your head. So it seems much scarier than it actually is. The one you really have to worry about though is the Bloodhound Knight. He's an absolute menace. If he pops in, just sprint away until he disappears. It's not worth trying to keep up the pressure while he's around. He's too fast. There is an alternative though. You can buy bewitching branches from one of the merchants in Liurnia, and that will help you charm certain kinds of enemies. The Bloodhound Knight, even as a summon, is one of those enemies. It might be a bit trickier to do than just to whack away at her with a maxed out Serpent Hunter, but it definitely has more style points. One thing you want to very quickly do before Rykard is to put Vow of the Indomitable on your rickety shield. Rykard is one of the bosses in this game that has an attack that can't be dodged with the normal roll alone and do need a specific solution to be avoided. So what you're going to want to do is practice switching from one-handed to two-handed very quickly so that you can cast Vow on command on this specific move, the Earthquake. You have a bunch of time before you need to actually press the button, so it's not really a reflexes test. You just need to get in the habit of doing it with a certain timing, which is just late enough for the move to last the duration of the Earthquake. Then, you need to swap back to two-handed for the damage. If you don't feel comfortable swapping backwards and forwards, you can just stay one-handed the whole time, but you will sacrifice a lot of damage and stagger if you do. There are other options to deal with this move, but this one I've found is definitely the most reliable. You may hate that you are required to bring this specific Ash to deal with this attack, and you do need to use a shield for this fight. That's the game. It's not perfect, but saying that, after I made peace with it, I actually began to really enjoy this playstyle of bringing out the shield to block that specific attack. It becomes the gimmick in this gimmick fight in the same way the Serpent Hunter is, and it forces you into a different playstyle that I find is really refreshing. Some might not. It does limit your options, especially at RL1, but I don't think it needs to be dreaded in the same way that some people make it out to be. This is totally fine. The fight is completely okay with an unupgraded Serpent Hunter, so I'd consider just using it as is, but obviously if you have already upgraded it to the max, you will just do more damage. You won't be melted as fast as Rennala, but it's still a big boost. For the most part, I think getting quick R1 pokes off is actually better than spamming bigger attacks because you'll get in more hits. The third attack in the chain often does a lot of damage too. The Ash of War will stun him twice, once in phase 1 and again in phase 2. As long as you hit him with the first attack, the follow-up is guaranteed and he'll be stunned long enough to get a follow-up attack in after. I save the Ash of War for after I get my first stagger so that I can really maximize that window. Rykard has a couple combos that will extend depending on what you do, and this is a really good lesson for a lot of bosses. Before I talked about positioning and combos, and Rykard has that when he lunges at you in phase 1. He goes for a bite once, and then sometimes a second time, and sometimes a third one. But he'll often take these extensions when you decide to be aggressive and punish when it's not safe. You just have to wait a fraction of a second, really. As soon as he starts to pull his head back, that means he's not going for that second or third hit, so you are free to attack him. He has some slow combos in phase 2 where you can get lots of little hits in between his sword swipes, and you'll really want to do that to optimize your damage and keep up that stagger bar. There's a lot going on in phase 2, and eventually there will be so many skulls and fire and lava craziness that it will become quickly very overwhelming. But I found even with a +0 Serpent Hunter, the fight never dragged out long enough to get unmanageable. In this fight, pretty much everything will start to kill you in one hit, so you have a much lower margin of error compared with Rennala and Godrick. If you're just doing mandatory bosses and you want an easier time, then fighting Rennala for the Great Rune is the way. Rykard, though, is my guy card. You'll be soon fighting many more bosses that will one-shot you, so unless you're going for a really defensive playstyle, I'd recommend getting used to it. Whether you got Rennala or Rykard or both, you now have 2 Great Runes. So talk to Enya at the round table for an extra talisman pouch. Juicy. Let's go through a few options for that slot. First, you're going to want to go to the Lux Ruins in Altus and bonk this big lady. She has super low health, so if you have a well-upgraded weapon, it should be no problem. She'll give you the Ritual Sword Talisman. It's a 10% damage increase to all attacks while you're at full HP. At level 1, you're going to be at full HP pretty much all the time because if you're not at full HP, you're probably dead. The next option is for the true daredevils. First, we need the Sacred Blade Ash of War, near the Third Church of Marika. This is like Flaming Strike but for holy damage. You can get the Sacred Scorpion Charm from Anastasia to up that damage even more. Next, go to Leonia at night and fight the Deathbird. These guys are a menace, but totally fine with Sacred Blade. You can even stay at range and fire them off. They can be frustrating, but if you're patient, you can totally get them down. This one gives you the Red Feather Branch Sword. Up in North Altus, you can get the Twin Bird Kite Shield. These items have a stackable effect, which is to give you more damage at low percent. Together, they give you a whopping 25% damage increase. Huge. To proc this effect, the most common way is to use Bloody Slash, which we got earlier. Put on a dagger and spam it until you're low and it procs. Big damage. This is the best way to take advantage of a glass cannon playstyle. Now, we're going to need to head into Lane Dell, and this is where I got to my first big wall, the Draconic Tree Sentinel. On my first RL1 run, this guy gave me a lot of trouble. I recommend Carry and Retaliation. He has a moveset very similar to Loretta, which is why I recommended parrying on that fight. You can also reflect the fireballs for really big damage, and if you're at range, he'll just keep spamming them. If you're not using Carry and Retaliation, you can roll in after each fireball to get in a pretty easy poke. The Draconic Tree Sentinel is strong against slash damage, so taking pierce or strike damage is the way to go. Like Loretta, he isn't able to be riposted, but you can still get big damage after the parries with a charged R2, followed by a jump heavy. You'll get a couple opportunities to get free damage at the start of the fight and in the phase change. Be aware that some attacks have shockwaves on the ground. His attacks will be different depending on which side of him you're on. If you're trying to parry, stick to the side with his weapon. If not, try to stick to his shield side. His attacks are much easier to dodge and punish. He can be really tough, but if you have a max level Somber weapon at this point, he will be no problem. Once you get him down, congratulations Tarnished, you are in the mid game. That's right, Tarnished. Ooh, feels good, doesn't it? Level 1 and in the pretty city. But we've got a long way to go yet. First, head across the rooftops and you'll find this creepy mask for a bit of free faith. And then double back past the big tree and light the grace. Nearby in the old round table hold, you can find the sanctified wet blade for sacred and lightning infusion. You can also find the hammer, which is another great strike weapon. Nearby, you can kill the omen killer for the omen smoke mask. This is a fantastic headpiece for extra strength, and it has a low equip load. The other thing we really need to pick up here is by the Colosseum. This is the talisman for anyone wanting to play more defensively. Ritual Shield. It's a really great talisman when you're learning bosses, as it keeps you in the fight while you're still learning to dodge. I wouldn't go past it if you want more survivability. The other important thing to pick up if you like using the Iron Ball is absolutely the best level 1 weapon in the game, the Star Fists. It does what the Iron Ball does, but with native bleed. It's crazy good. At this point, you can go down to the subterranean shunning grounds, and that can give you some really important upgrade stones if you want to upgrade your smithing stone weapon. The shunning grounds can be really tough to navigate at RL1, so just follow this path. This big horny dude will jump down. If you try to attack, more of them will follow, so just run around him while he's jumping and go up the ladder. Open these doors, and then the lever for the shortcut. If you keep going around, then you'll eventually reach this other big horny guy, and this guy always gave me trouble, but it turns out you can just Metal Gear Solid right past him with the crouch and go up the ladder without him realizing. I had no idea stealth was in the game until I tried a level 1 run. There are a ton of enemies you can just sneak right past, including the dreaded Fire Knights in the DLC. Try this if you're really having trouble getting past an enemy. Metal Gear Solid doesn't work here. You're gonna have to do a mad dash. You gotta make your way here for a grace point for safety. You'll then need to do a bit of a kamikaze run here and run around the lobster area for some more smithing stones, another Somber 7, and Mohg's Shackle. This will come in handy. Then head back up to the grace point and follow this path. You can get some smithing stone 7s here and also an 8 around these tunnels. Then drop into this hole. Be prepared for the ambush. Mini Mohg is here. You can get him now, with or without the shackle, to get access to the Deeproot Depths. That means we don't have to take care of the Valiant Gargoyles, which is a godsend. We won't be able to get there until after Morgott though, so up to you if you want to do that now. Unlike real Mohg, Mini Mohg is immune to status effects, so no bleed, but if you have a fully upgraded Somber weapon at this point like I do with the Serpent Hunter here, he's no problem. It's a good idea to use the shackle strategically for staggers. You have 2 uses of it. So try to get 1 charged heavy in, then shackle, do enough hits to get a stagger, riposte, and do it again. He should be pretty close to being done at that point. Some things to be aware of with Mohg. When he puts his fork in the ground, be careful of the shockwave when he pulls it out. You're totally fine to strafe it and punish it, just make sure you're out of the range. You can also strafe past his fire hand move, but watch for the swing that follows. Other than that, you really just need to make sure you're getting quick R1s in between his attacks, as well as after. Some attacks have different timings, and you can actually squeeze in bigger punishes. This Fire Claw move is a delay. Don't roll the initial swipe, instead wait a beat, and then roll when it explodes. Usually, if you move back from the fire, that will trigger him to do the charge move, which is very easy to dodge and punish if you just roll forward. And that's about it for the Shunning Grounds. So let's head straight up to Golden Godfrey. He's weak to both Pierce and Lightning, so an infusible weapon with Lightning Slash would go really well here. When you enter, his first move will often be him jumping in the air, and it's a really great opportunity to get a quick charge off if you roll at the right time. When he does the stomp, you can jump it and get a quick attack in. If you do a jump heavy though, you'll likely not get enough time to recover unless it's a lighter weapon. You can also strafe a good deal of his moves for bigger punishes. You'll be very stamina starved in this fight because a lot of his punishes are between his attacks. Turtle Talisman or Physic is really good here to stay aggressive. Once he's down, you will be rewarded with your last talisman pouch. Now, do you want to clear just the mandatory bosses and then roll credits, or do you want to get all of them? If you do just want to roll credits, feel free to skip ahead to the next mandatory boss, which is Morgott, because we're going to do a whole bunch of optional stuff now. First up, Radahn. Radahn can be frustrating because of the gauntlet of ranged attacks he will do at you before you can even start the fight. You can bypass it if you go back and then forward, which bugs him out and transitions him into melee mode, but you still have to wait ages before his AI figures out what is going on and heads towards you. This is especially annoying in the learning process because you can often spend a minute or so getting to him only to die immediately. The best way to avoid this is to jump on your horse and then head forward, let the debris tank the first hit, and move to the second. After that, head forward to the right, down the slope, and then behind this dune, and then just kind of wait until he stops shooting stuff at you. There is this attack which he can do where he shoots arrows in the air which follows you. You do need to respect that and run away until it stops. Now, summoning. Do you do it? I say no. I think it actually makes the fight harder at RL1. Yes, it takes the heat off you, but he also becomes much harder to hit because he zooms around on his horsey to the other NPCs, forcing you to chase him. He also has really big sweeping attacks, and he'll often switch aggro really quickly. If you do want to summon, I found the best option was to get occasional jump heavies off when it is absolutely safe, and then wail on him when he's staggered, rather than go for a riposte. A couple things to watch out for. This combo has a very specific directional dodge pattern. If you do dodge the wrong way, you can get frame trapped and killed. Also, watch for when Radahn gets off his horse and lunges at you. You can get a couple easy charges on him before he does a get off me attack. At about 75%, he will do this gravity attack, which is safe to punish if you're at his butt. After that, if you reposition yourself to his front, you can bait out another big attack, which can be easily punished again. If your attack is strong enough, this could make him phase change, which can again be punished. His meteor attack is actually very easy to deal with. When he goes into the sky, keep your camera on one spot on the horizon. He will come back from that location. You don't need to spin the camera around to look for him. That's where he'll drop in. To watch out for this move, he'll charge forward and you'll have to run in the opposite direction and then head back towards him to jump over the wave. The Serpent Hunter here does pretty respectable damage at max, but the Rusted Anchor, ooh. If you want to get this guy down, I say this is the weapon to do it with. When I first beat Radahn at level 1, it was the first time that I realized that I might actually be able to beat the whole game like this. And if you've done this, you can too. Big pat on the back. And we've unlocked a significant part of the map now, so head on into that big ol' hole. Head all the way down the path until you meet the toughest boss in the game, you. You can unequip your weapon and then re-equip it when you enter if you really want the fight to be a stomp, but the Mimic Tier is a clone of you in every way, so it will be dust in a couple hits. Once you're done with that, and you're down in the Ancestral Woods, we have the option to take on one more remembrance boss, so let's do that. The Regal Ancestor Spirit is really a pretty simple fight. It's weak to slash, fire, And Holy, meaning an infusible slash weapon with Flaming Strike or Sacred Blade, is going to go crazy here. Its status resistances are super high, but it doesn't really matter because its HP is super low, and it has that low HP to compensate for the fact that it heals. Really, any weapon choice here will be fine, but elemental infusions with the Scorpion Charms and the Tears will do a lot. It does have a super spindly model though, so you may want a weapon that covers a lot of space so you don't whiff. Flaming Strike is really good for that. You do really have to respect the blue goo. Strafe it and stay away until it clears. This move, where it jumps in the air a few times and then jumps down, is just a simple timing check, which doesn't take too long to memorize. The other one to keep in mind is when it rams its horns at you. This is a combo that will extend, so just wait and then punish. Other than that, the only thing I'd tell you to watch out for is when you're behind it. It can kick you in the head, but that's really it. This one should be in the bag. After that, you can head to the Eternal City, eventually picking up the Black Whetblade. This one gives you the bleed infusion, which is massive. So many bosses are weak to bleed, including a little someone that's coming up pretty soon, so this is very handy. Keep going and pick up the item to finish Rani's quest and continue that quest line along. You'll have to do the inverted carrion manner, which is actually really annoying at RL1. You can Giant's Hunt Big Hat to death, but you could also just run past everything and bum rush to the elevator if you're confident in your footwork. You'll get the Stargazer Talisman to help out with some intelligence stats. Keep following that quest line all the way down to the Ansel River main, and you can pick up the Wing of Astel, and this one requires quite a bit of intelligence and dexterity to wield, but it isn't a problem with your Physic, Headpiece, and Talismans. This weapon is insane with stagger and has a really strong ranged heavy, so it's a great pick for some of the bosses coming up. You'll find Blade further on. Giant's Hunt is amazing here, as always. Keep going until you get to the Lake of Rot. Here, you can pick up a couple things. The Mushroom set will help you if you're doing a Poison or a Rot build, as the bonus stacks with your Talismans. Once you raise the platforms, you can also fight this guy right here for a new weapon. This weapon is no joke, one of the strongest weapons of the game. The Asher War is fine, but the real reason this is so good is because of the Charged Heavy, which does as much damage as a Colossal weapon, but is much faster and consumes way less stamina. The other great thing about it is that it does gravity damage, and you know who's weak to gravity damage? Astel is one of those bosses that can be really annoying if you do low damage because he is often teleporting away from you to shoot things from far away. He can also teleport above you and dive down, so when he teleports it's a good idea to unlock the camera and look around to make sure he's not going to swoop. He's not too difficult, but he can be if you don't respect him. He has several extremely lethal get-off-me attacks. It's best to just run out. If he attacks with his tail and you're at his face, you pretty much have free reign to wail on him because it's just going to go over your head. Astel is weaker to physical damage and weak to all statuses except cold, which he's immune to. You can always get in a charged heavy after a stagger and still get the riposte, and then you can get another one after. I found it wasn't too bad to spam roll the meteor shower and get a big punish, but later I found out if you just run to the left or right in a straight line, it will miss you pretty consistently. I used the Antspur Rapier with Poison Fusion as well. I thought this would be good because there is a great deal of time where you can't attack him safely, and that was pretty spot on. This was really good, and he died from poison while the meteor went off. Recommended. Be aggressive when it's safe, but respect his get-off-me moves, and this should be fine. The simple option, though, is not to deal with the get-off-me options at all, and instead play at range. Although Astel is immune to cold, you can infuse Ice Spear with magic and do pretty respectable damage very safely. Definitely use this option if you're really having trouble, but even in melee, this guy isn't as tough as he looks. Afterwards, continue up the elevator and pick up some high-level smithing stones. If you've already got the higher-level stones in Caelid, the Subterranean Shunning Grounds, and near Mohg, you should have all the stones required to upgrade all the way to plus 24. You can now max that weapon out if you follow Sellen's questline and side with Jaren at the end. Choose wisely which weapon you'd like to use this on, because it is going to be a little while before you're going to be able to max another one, and we're going to use this weapon to take on Mohg. You may be thinking that's wild to take him on right now, that's a late game boss, but we're at max now with all the talisman slots we're going to get, so we're not getting any stronger, and we really want access to the DLC for some extremely helpful resources. If you don't have access to the DLC, feel free to do Mohg later or skip it completely, but I'm going to do it now. A couple things first though, if you are planning to use bleed, which you probably should, you can pick up the white mask. All you need to do is just Giants Hunt this guy to oblivion. That's going to give you a bonus to your damage after bleed procs. You can also stack that with a talisman, but to do that, you need to fight Edgar near the lobster pit. Now, Edgar is a nightmare at level 1 because of the dogs, but here's a very handy hint. If you use the beast repellent torch, which you can get from the vendor in Dragon Barrow, you can hold it in your left hand to keep the dogs where they are. Then, just switch to your main weapon and Giants Hunt Edgar. Killing him will make the doggies disappear and you'll get your talisman. Easy peasy. We are ready. Now it's time to take on the Lord of Blood himself. Obviously Mohg is weak to bleed, and we've picked up some tools that can help us with that. That can absolutely break this encounter and essentially let us skip Mohg if we really want to. But do you want to? If you watched my Lost Art video, I went through one of my strategies of fighting Mohg with Carrion Retaliation and Wild Strikes on the Jawbone Axe. And this was really strong because it let me deal with the blood splatter, allowing me to stay aggressive and also deal enough damage with bleed that he didn't heal much after Nihil. But there are other options, of course. I tried the fight out with just the regular old Serpent Hunter we've been taking through the game. It's really good for getting pokes even while the blood splatter is going off because of its range. It let me get free damage off anytime he did that move. The best way to maximize your damage in this fight is to play around Nihil. You can get a charged heavy anytime he counts, as long as you go around the back of him. If you stay in front, you'll get a whack. This means if you play it right, you can stagger after the second count, go behind him while he recovers, get a whole massive charged heavies off in a row, leaving him in a pretty rough state for phase 2. As a test, I didn't use the purifying tear on this run and found that it really wasn't that rough to deal with, even with Sore Seal. If you heal the first and third and tank the second, you can even squeeze in some extra damage. You'll lose 3 flasks, but you're not getting much use out of them anyway. Honestly, I'd recommend using the tier slot for something you'd get more use of. Second phase is where things get really tricky. His different attacks now also do a blood splatter, and you need to pay attention to the trajectory and dodge accordingly. This can completely change the direction you dodge his moves in the second phase, which can mess you around a bit and force you to relearn them. He also has a whole bunch of new moves and several variations within them. Now he won't just charge at you with his trident, he'll charge past you, and he'll often follow that up with a very quick attack. His fork shockwave will now be much larger and can't be strafed anymore, it needs to be rolled. There is also a swoop move he does that has a shockwave as well that needs to be rolled in the same way. And this swoop move can be tough because there are 2 variations with different dodge timings. The tell is him either fluttering in the air before diving or coming straight down. If you have Mohg phase 1 down, you're already on the right track. Once you get those new moves down, you'll get them just fine. If you really start to tear your hair out and you just want to get to the DLC, you can just shackle him and really mess him up. It's that easy. But if you enjoy Elden Ring for the pleasure of overcoming tremendous odds, Mohg is one of the best examples of that. Okay, DLC time. There's a lot I won't cover. Bottom line is, if it's good in a normal run and it doesn't have crazy stat requirements, it's probably good at level 1. So here we go. First off, you're going to find a bunch of blessings around if you follow me here. Totally fine if you use them. It doesn't conflict with the level 1 run at all. If you use them, you're still a onebro. You can get most of the blessings in the game without fighting anything. So if you want to be really strong in the DLC really early, feel free to check out one of the many guides online that can show you a good route. Let's get some talismans. Blade of Mercy is picked up pretty much immediately. It's a must for pretty much any build doing lots of riposte. Anytime you want to do big staggers or parries, this. Two-handed sword talisman is a must, self-explanatory. This is a huge source of damage if you're two-handing. Twin turtle talisman is easy to get. It's a direct upgrade. Definitely pick this up. From the Grace Point in the Cerulean Coast near the Big Hole, you can make a couple jumps to get this very important cookbook. This is going to help you against the duo. These are the Eternal Sleep Pots. These are much easier to farm and they're infinite. You can get a bell for the white flesh mushrooms near Elec River, and that'll speed up the crafting process even more. Speaking of crafting, head on past the church and find this little critter. Do not kill this man. Give him a warming stone and he'll perk right up. Head back to Grace to give him some time to get his bearings and head on back to him for a cookbook. But it's not this cookbook we're after. For that, we need to talk to Morgott. He'll give us Forager Cookbook 7, which allows us to craft a consumable which lets us charm enemies. This will come in handy in one upcoming fight in particular. The cookbooks are good, people. Use them. Let's talk weapon choices. Some easy to get weapons with low stat requirements are the Great Katana, Backhand Blades, and Milady. They're out in the open, don't require killing anything, and they're all really good. If you defeat this guy down south by the church, you can get the Black Steel Great Hammer. This one, like the Clayman's Harpoon, has inbuilt holy damage, but it can be infused. It's really good for holy builds, which a good deal of the DLC is weak to. It also has boosted guard counters, so it's really great for the deflecting hard tier, which you can get from this golem right at the start. These guys suck to kill, but no more than on a normal run. The deflecting hard tier is fantastic. At level 1, it's borderline broken. To make it even stronger, you can get the curved sword talisman back in Stormvale to boost those guard counters even more. Inside the Shadowkeep, you can get the Carrion thrusting shield, which is really strong if you want to be more defensive. You can also farm the regular Messmer soldier enemies for two incredibly underrated weapons, the Messmer soldier axe and the Messmer soldier spear. Like the Alabaster Lord sword, the axe has insane charged heavies. The spear is also fantastic. It has a charged heavy that hits twice, making it great for status builds and also great for Royal Knight's Resolve. In Ballarat, giants hunt Queeline to death. Then you can get Shriek of Sorrow, which is an insanely good Asher War to use with Red Feather Branch Sword and the Twin Bird Kite Shield. This can boost your damage up to 50%. Insane. Get the Well Depths key and head to the sewers. If you sprint all the way to the right, you can get the Poison Hand here, which will boost your Poison Rot builds even more. You don't even need to equip it to get the boost. Put it in your offhand and forget it. It has low weight, so it's really free damage if you're using that setup. You don't need to meet the requirements. Next, head back to the church again to Giants Hunt Queeline for an amazing Asher War that is basically like Giants Hunt, but instead of flipping them up in the air, it applies a fire buff like Flaming Strike. Near the cathedral, you can find Carrion Sovereignty, which, you'll see. You can farm these horned fellas and the Curse Blade dudes for these headpieces, which will give you a pretty massive boost of stats at really low weight. The pain is farming them. Do it if you need to, but don't tear your hair out over it. You can also farm these birds for their helmet, which gives really good stats. You can also get their shoes, which gives extra power to kicks. If you pair that with the Shattered Stone Talisman, you can get more kick power and then use that with Poison Flower Blooms twice. I call it the Dirty Birdie. The last few things do require us to kill some things. They can be tough, but with a bit of Giants Hunt and a bunch of blessings, it's not too bad. If you go down the secret path from the Shadow Keep, you'll get to Rakshasa. You'll require a fair bit of the old Giants hunting, but the set you receive as a reward is a pretty massive boost. If you don't care about losing light roll or looking pretty, each piece is a damage boost, both giving and receiving. Since you're a wet paper bag, that hardly matters, so it's a great set at level 1. You can head down here to see the Dragon Man and Giants hunt him for the Dragon Hunter Great Katana. This is really great for killing the dragons in the open world, which reward us with more max level stones. Okay, that's enough. We're loaded up, let's get on with it. Back to the base game. We're continuing with the mandatory bosses. It's time for Morgott. I did a big video detailing my own learning process with Morgott, and you can see that video here. In that video, I learned the fight using a pretty weak weapon, but some very strong tools. I parried him and used the deflecting hard tier. I definitely wouldn't recommend parrying Morgott. He's got some really weird quirks when you parry him. Deflecting hard tier, however, was really good. And if you have that, I would definitely recommend it. If you don't, no stress. Morgott can be solved with a very similar strategy to Margit, staying at mid-range and coming in when he has a delayed attack to strafe and punch. Unlike Margit, Morgott is actually significantly easier in Phase 2 because he has more of these delayed attacks. You can also absolutely skip Phase 2 completely. Morgott has some thresholds with his spears and his phase changes, and if you strategize with the shackle, you can really abuse those thresholds for scripting. I've mentioned scripting previously. This is where you abuse a boss's pre-programmed moves to force a rhythm. If you do want the challenge, check out the Mind Over Morgott video for more tips, but if you just want him gone, feel free to wipe the floor with him. Now that Morgott is more gone, we've opened up another massive area of the map. But first, if you did the Nepheli Lu and Kenneth Haight questlines, you can go back to Stormvale to get some handy max level upgrade stones. We're about at that point where having a fully upgraded weapon is pretty much expected, so it's a good idea to have a few options for weapons so that we're equipped for a variety of situations. Once those stones are in hand, activate the lift. You can immediately check out the Zamor ruins next to the Grace Point for a new smithing stone bell. Very handy if we want to upgrade a new weapon to use our max stones. We will be stuck with limited 7s and 8s for a little while though, so choose wisely. In the Big Lake, you can attack the invisible bug for seppuku. This is a fantastic Ashawar if you're going whole hog on a bleed build. It's very strong. Next, you can make your way all the way to the church near the fire giant. You'll get invaded by Okina. You can giants hunt him to hell, but he can still be really annoying. When you do get him down though, you can get his face, and his face gives you a pretty nice bonus to dexterity. So it's a great alternative to the Curseblade Mask if you can't be asked farming it. After Okina has been dealt with, you can head up to the skull right above you for another easy ancient smithing stone. There's a few other things we want to do in the mountaintops, but let's take a quick intermission back down the deep root depths and take down another remembrance boss. But before we do that, we need to fight a boss that no one really likes, fears champions. What you're going to want to do first, if you haven't already, is to make sure you're playing offline. If you're online, the random NPCs are modeled after real players in the game. So sometimes they're tissue paper and sometimes they're gods. Playing offline makes them much more consistent and manageable. Rogier isn't too bad if you get a good Giants Hunt run on him, but he does have a habit of being very evasive. The real trouble, though, is the third fight, when you have to fight 2 random NPCs and Lionel. Lionel will summon these ghosties, and when you're at level 1, you need to respect those ghosties and not attack when there's a chance they can hit you. But you also need to space these guys out, so if you Giants Hunt, they don't clip you on the back of the head. Meaning if there's 2 clumped together, it's really risky to attack, and if there's ghosties, it's really risky to attack, and rarely is there a time when neither of these things are happening. You can super boost your damage with buffs to nuke at least 1 down at the start to make things a little easier, but the name of the game here is patience. Just pick your moment, be safe. While it's time consuming and pretty boring, it's not difficult as long as you take your sweet time. Keep at it, be patient, you'll get them eventually. When you finally finish, you're rewarded with another fairly controversial fight. It's time for Fortissax. Fortissax gets a lot of hate. I really don't think he's that bad, but it really depends on your playstyle and what you're choosing to restrict yourself with. If you are 100% melee only, no ranged Ashawar, swinging big sword only, yeah, this could suck for you. If you allow yourself Ice Spear, this could be one of the easier bosses of the run. This does insane damage and it's very simple. All you need to do is keep it range and keep his head locked on, stay clear of the black clouds and watch the waves. When you've got that red fuzz on you, then you need to keep moving because it will eventually spawn on top of you and could likely kill you. It spawns on you when you're underneath him, so watch out. Because Ice Spear is fast and you'll always be moving, it's not so much of a problem. It is incredibly good on this boss, but we can do better. I'm going to show you something a little wild. I'm on New Game Plus on this character, meaning Fortissax currently has 25% more health than usual, and I'm not nearly as strong as I could be. I'm not using any buffs. Watch this. I'll play it on double speed for the sake of time. That was like 5 hits. That's crazy. So if you're having trouble with Fortissax, I mean, do that. But I know what you're saying, that's cheese. What do I do if I'm restricted to a melee playstyle? What if I'm not using Ashes of War? Well, I've got you. It's not going to go nearly as smoothly, but I've got you. We've got 2 options. One is we wait for big opportunities to go for his head, or we go for the death of 1,000 cuts option. For the head option, you're waiting for your opportunity to get one massive hit in. For that reason, Royal Knight's Resolve should be your go-to. All dragons are pretty reliably weak to pierce, so a Great Spear is a great option. Pair that with some buffs or the Red Feathered Brand Sword and you've got some big burst. I use the Messmer Spear, and if you run straight up to Fortissax at the beginning, you can get a jump heavy for massive damage. For more of these, and he's probably toast. But you do really have to pick your moments. For this option, you're going to want to stay in front of him at all times, and if he gets too close, cross over to the other side of him. Fortissax is weak to status, so you can just slice away at his legs and try to get some procs off. The issue is, with that, you will constantly have the red lightning on you because you're underneath him. You will again need to keep crossing over and then back again in order to stay safe. Both options require patience. They also require very good movement and, most importantly, aim. I suck at that. Fortissax is spindly as hell. I spent a good deal of the time using these options missing, to be honest, so if you think you'd have trouble with that or you have issues using the camera in fights like these, I'd recommend going the easier route with one of the ranged options. I didn't, however, and went with the Antspur Rapier, and I got him down just... Screw it. Another Remembrance boss down. There is another big optional area we can start to explore for lots of goodies, but I think it's a good time now to get back to the mandatory bosses because there's one really important item that we need. So let's do it. Fire Giant time. Fire Giant was on my first level 1 run in the top 3 fights that took me the longest to get down. He's known as the run killer, and he can be really annoying. I'm going to show you a range of options to help you take him down. All of these are really strong and should give you a leg up. The name of the game here with Fire Giant is to unlock your camera and look up to get a better sense of timing. A good deal of the frustration of Fire Giant is not seeing what he's doing because his model is so big. I used to find Fire Giant incredibly difficult, but now I actually find him one of the easier bosses, and I think that pretty much all comes down to how much I've improved operating the camera. If you haven't cracked moving your camera while sprinting or playing unlocked, you're gonna need to practice for this fight. Fire Giant is weak to slash damage. He's also fairly weak to all status effects, except cold. A weapon with high stagger is really good here. He'll take a long time to recover after you break the braid on his foot, meaning high stagger can pretty much script the first half of the fight. After getting stunned from breaking his ankle, he will always send out these slow-moving fire orbs. The best way to deal with these is to get on torrent and wait until they're spawned. Then sprint past them on the horse, making them explode. Then turn around and engage him again. You really have to respect that move. In the second phase, walk slightly forward and Fire Giant will very nicely put his hands directly in front of you to wail on. If he doesn't stagger from this, he'll follow this move usually with this volcano thing where he'll stay stationary and erupt up into the air. It's pretty safe just to run up to his leg and charge more heavies. This will most likely stagger and you can get an attack on the eye before you riposte. This will probably put him very low, if not dead already, so the second half of the fight is also really easily scripted if you have enough damage. If you don't have enough damage, then it's really a thing of finding opportunities to go behind him and wail on his foot to try and get more staggers. Fire Giant has no negation for either magic or lightning, making split damage builds really good here. I used Lightning Slash on the Godskin Peeler and it did a whole bunch of damage. Both poison or bleed builds would also be fantastic in phase 2 with his boosted defenses. The other option, if you really wanted to just blast right past him, is Carrion Sovereignty. This Ash slaps him. It has a massive amount of stagger and damage, and because he spends so much time stationary, you can get it off completely free in phase 1 and phase 2 multiple times. If you're having a ton of trouble with Fire Giant and you have access to the DLC, this is what you want to use because it will make the fight pretty trivial. However you do it, it's done. Getting Fire Giant is a massive achievement. Pat yourself on the back because you have now finished the mid game. It's late game, baby. This is the stuff you probably struggled with even on a high-level character. It's tough, but I'll do my best to get you through it. The good news is that in the late game, we don't have too much running around to do. We only really have a couple areas that we need to explore and collect goodies in. Other than that, late game is essentially a boss rush. So, let's get into it, burn that Erd, and let's get to Farum Azula. The first half of Farum Azula is pretty painless to sprint through. Just run past everything until you eventually get to the grace point before what could be the biggest headache of this run. But it doesn't have to be. I think it's perfectly fine to pretty much skip it using sleep pots and bleed. If you land your sleep pots, then you can go the entire fight without even having to avoid an attack. If you are worried about this fight, don't be if you are willing to cheese it. If you're not willing to cheese it, yikes. This is going to be a time. You can summon Banal for extra help, but if you're unwilling to sleep them, you're probably unwilling to summon, so I don't know. If you're crazy enough to do this fight without sleep, yeah, it's gonna be fucking awful. I'll say that much. Big respect to anyone that does the fight like that. Maybe one day I'll do the same, but today is not that day. After the fight, we'll get what we really came here for, which is the last Smithing Stone Bell. This will allow us to upgrade infinite weapons all the way to 24. You should have a few extra max ancient smithing stones if you've been following this guide, so feel free to get some more weapons for your late game arsenal. There's a few more max stones in Farum Azula if you feel the need to get some more. There are also a bunch in the DLC that can be gotten pretty easily as well without killing anything. You can activate the elevator here and climb up all the way to reach Alexander if you haven't already killed him and finish the quest line for the Alexander Shard. Whatever you do, don't do what I did and kill him before you exhaust all his dialogue. That will ruin your life. Double back to the staircase before the elevator and go down. Eventually you'll get to this grace point and you will have in front of you the dreaded Bird Gauntlet. This takes real finesse. You can use Assassin's Gambit to make things a little easier on yourself, but it won't be easy. You'll have to do a lot of ducking and weaving. Once you jump up to the dragon, you can just run past him to get an ancient somber stone, and this will make the dragon fly away, giving you a clear path. The danger isn't over yet though, so be on your guard. But once you do get to the elevator, you're in the clear. Thank Christ. You can get the Draconic Tree Sentinel out of the way now if you'd like. He's exactly the same as the last one, but with more health, so the same strategies apply. He's on a bit of a ramp, which makes it a little awkward, but if you got him down before, you'll get him down here as well. Now we're pretty much ready for the final stretch. You can take on Maliketh right now if you'd like, but I'm going to open up the last big area of the map and clear it out so that we have a boss rush to finish things off. We want to get to the consecrated snowfields. We need to take down Nile. Nile can be really tough. This is why we got that cookbook in the DLC. The Charming branch is an AoE. So if you trigger it on the knight, you'll also charm the other one at the same time. This will let you start the fight in a really strong place because both of them will wail on Nile while you can just hang back and chuck ice spears at him. If you don't have this item or you don't have the DLC, things are a bit tougher, but if you have Ice Spear, it's still pretty manageable. Back up and spear down the 2 soldiers one by one. Once the soldiers are dead, you'll start phase 2 and you'll do a long wind-up animation to get there. That gives you even more opportunities to chuck Ice Spears and get him even lower. This will most likely stagger him and put him pretty much halfway dead. Then it's just a matter of playing keep away. If you stay at range, he'll pretty much always loop this lightning move, which is really easy to dodge. Just keep backing off and chucking Ice Spears to keep him in the loop. I did this on New Game Plus and it was perfectly manageable. If you're doing a run with lots of restrictions, this could be really tough, but with the right tools, this is a breeze. And with that, you'll have the other half of the medallion, so you're ready to head to the consecrated snowfield. If you head up all the way to the tippy top, you can get to the tree man, who you can defeat for the thorny cracked tier. This will boost your builds with consecutive attacks. Things like the Godskin Peeler, or Power Stance weapons, or the Milady would do very well to use this. Next, we'll need to open up the way to the Haligtree. If you know the way, you can pretty much just sprint your way through with no issue. Your one big problem moment is this bit right here with the archers on the roof. This bit sucks. Assassin's Gambit can help you through and make it a bit easier, but it still requires a bit of finesse on the platforming. If you have a great bow, you can actually shoot this archer down. If not, you just might have to keep at it until you get past her. She is pretty annoying. Once that's done though, the rest of the shrines are very easy to light up, and then you'll have the way forward through to the Haligtree. This gauntlet down the tree to the next grace can be a real headache. Once you make it to this grace point though, it's a pretty clean run all the way to the shortcut before Loretta. Loretta is very similar to the last time you fought her, but with some extra magic shenanigans. On the whole though, the strategy is the same. You'll now have carry and retaliation though, so not only can you parry her, but you can reflect her spells for more damage. But just like Draconic Tree Sentinel, this is a fight you've probably already done, and there's nothing really new other than the fact she has more damage and health. It's a pretty clean run right through to the grace point before Malenia. You can stop off on the way to get Marika's Saw Seal if you want to use a weapon with some funky stat requirements, or you just want to be the coolest guy around rocking double Saw Seals. Once you're finally at the bottom, light the grace point, and we are done here. We won't take on Malenia just yet, but we have done the legwork. That's pretty much all the running around we'll have to do. From now on, this is a boss rush right to the end. There are a bunch of other max stones we can pick up if we ever feel the need to get a new weapon, but no more sprinting away from enemies to get between grace points. All that's left now is to die over and over again to the hardest bosses in the base game. You've got this. Placidusax, unfortunately, doesn't classify as either a dragon or an ancient dragon, so the Dragon Hunter Great Katana won't help us out here. The Lion's Greatbow does do work and allows for a safer playstyle at range. It does really amazing stagger, so it's a good option if you really want to play safely. I do think, though, it's an easier fight up close. As safe as it is at range, his claws aren't really a huge issue. The most annoying move is the red lightning that spawns that forces you to continue moving like Fortissax. Because you need to stand still for so long to shoot the Lion's Great Bow, it can be really risky unless you time it really carefully. Like all dragons, Placidusax is weak to pierce, but unlike Fortissax, he's very resistant to status effects. That being said, you do get a lot more opportunities to get hits in, so Antspur Rapier is still great here to proc rot and let that tick away while he's flying around and going invisible in phase 2. My preferred option though is to go for really big hits with Shriek of Sorrow or Royal Knight's Resolve. Messmer's Soldier Spear is really great for that. Run out for the lightning, then just run back in again and charge a heavy. Placidusax is a lot easier to maneuver around than Fortissax. If you're in front, he very often does this claw move, which you can very easily roll past and then sprint to his tail. He'll always follow that with a fire breath, which you can easily avoid if you just keep running and then continue attacking the tail from the other side. The other thing to watch out for is when he gets out the red lightning spear. This is a massive AoE and you want to respect it and get the hell out. You can use Raptor of the Mists or Vow the Indomitable to more easily avoid this and stay in the fight, so if this move is knocking you down consistently, it might be an option to consider. In phase 2, he'll zip around a lot and be much more unpredictable. Play it safe and hang back until he stops teleporting and just keep trying to get around to his tail. The big problem move with Placidusax is the lasers. What you actually want to do when he's flying around is to move as close as you can to the edge of the arena, so that when he does the laser move, you can go behind him for big punishes. If he starts doing the laser though, and he is nowhere near the edge of the wall and you can't get behind him, the name of the game is distance. You want to be as far away from him as possible and just spam roll, really. Honestly, that seems to work for me okay, but it's not consistent. If you're really struggling, Vow of the Indomitable will help you out. Placidusax is actually deceptively simple. If you have low damage, it can be a long fight, but with a little patience, this is very doable. Now, back to the mandatory bosses. Maliketh gave me a ton of trouble on my first RL1 to the point that I pretty happily cheesed him. It wasn't until I did my video recently learning him properly that I figured out how he works, and now I have a much easier time with him. What I realized is that if you stay at the mid-range and bait out this full combo, he will do this move, which is very easy to punish with a charged heavy. If you're too far away or too close, then he will not do this, so it takes some very specific positioning to get it. If not, you may find yourself constantly chasing him with little opportunity to get a big attack in. Maliketh doesn't really have any standout physical or elemental weaknesses, but he does have very low resistances to poison and scarlet rot, so a build utilizing that is very strong. I used Poison Flower on the Messmer Soldier Spear, and it was really good. A good deal of his attacks can also be jumped over, which means you can do some really tricky stuff with this Ash. If you're still really having trouble with phase 1 and this trick of baiting him into this combo isn't working, you can play his game and play at ranged. Ice Spear is incredibly good here, and if you want an easy way out, this is it. When second phase starts, if you move just back and to the right, just this little bit to the edge of the circle, and then roll forward on his first attack, you can get a couple charged heavies here every time. Without fail, it's scripted. This could steamroll you through and skip the whole phase if you have enough damage and time your staggers. I actually learnt this in the last Maliketh video, but I had to cut it out because unbeknownst to me, I kept triggering a bug that stopped this from happening. It turns out there is this very strange bug with certain bosses where if you riposte them and that damage puts them into phase 2, instead of starting the new phase in this scripted position, you'll stay where you were when you triggered the riposte, and that can really mess you up. For that reason, I really recommend for Maliketh, Godfrey, and DLC Radahn, you don't phase change them with a riposte. If you get a stagger, and it's likely the damage will tick them over into the next phase, do a charge instead. It's safer, and you'll probably get a bigger punish if you know what to expect at the start of the phase. Maliketh's second phase is actually much easier than the first. It may seem harder because he has much more flamboyant attacks, but the solutions to these attacks are pretty simple. Often if you just roll the first attack of the combo, you can just get free damage off like you did at the start of the phase. The really scary ones are when he perches on his sword and then starts cartwheeling towards you, but all you need to do is just run to his butt and charge some heavies. Now if you head down left of the Grace Point before Maliketh, you'll be invaded by Banal, and if you Giants hunt him down, you will get this lovely little claw. And this claw can be used to parry Maliketh in phase 2 when he jumps in the air. The moment to press the button is when you see this yellow flash. Definitely give this a go if you haven't already, because this is really satisfying. And with that, we're out of Farum Azula and back to Lane Dell. You can head up to the dragon for another max level stone if you still don't have enough, but there's not a great deal of interest around here, so you might as well head right on up to Gideon. Gideon sucks. He just sucks. Obviously, Giant's Hunt is the play here. You can also just poke him while he's casting spells to stop them, but if he gets one off, it's likely he'll get a bazillion more off because he can chain them together really quickly. He's very annoying. On your first attempt with him, you'll get a bunch of time to open with a massive attack while he monologues at you. Then you can just spam Giant's Hunt. Buff up like crazy so you can try to nuke him right at the start of the fight. If you do die though, you'll have a much harder time from there because he'll no longer monologue at you to get a head start. You'll have to make your way to him, dodging spells. Ugh, it sucks. What I would recommend is to back up your save so that if you do die, you can just reload and have an easier time while he's monologuing. Once you get him though, you'll be able to head to my favorite fight in the base game. Godfrey has different weaknesses in Phase 1 and 2, making him a bit weird to build around, but like Golden Godfrey, his big weakness is lightning, so split damage is very handy. He's also very weak to poison and rot, and that build would be real nice, especially in Phase 2. Phase 1 is pretty much the same as Golden Godfrey with a couple notable differences. At around 75%, he'll do this very slow roar and stomp. He takes way more time with this than you'd think, and you can freely wail on him with charged heavies while he does it. If you don't have the damage to phase change him after this move, all his stomp moves will be arena wide, so you can no longer strafe them. Godfrey has that weird riposte bug, so you don't want to mess around with that because in Phase 2 he starts with a lunge that is pretty simple to dodge and punish to get a good head start. From there, things get tougher. Godfrey in Phase 2 is scary. His whole thing is punishing panic rolling. He has delays on a lot of his attacks, and he's always advancing on you with grabs and stomps. For that reason, it's often a much better option to sprint away rather than roll. This is much safer than you might think, and it allows you to double back for a jump heavy pretty safely. When he does this roar and jumps in the air, that's your cue to move the hell away. Take that time to buff up a little or heal and then re-engage. After a little while, he'll do another slow stomp, use the opportunity to wail on him. After he does this, just like in Phase 1, all his stomp moves will be arena wide, so they will need to be jumped. You can also absolutely cheese him with Ice Spear and just stay at range. That's especially effective in Phase 2. I do challenge you though to take on this fight fairly. This fight for me is peak Elden Ring. It's time. This is the one, folks. It's time to talk Malenia. If you've seen my other video about Malenia, you'll know I'm not the biggest fan of her. In that video, I sought to learn how to fight her just with trial and error, no online help or resources, and without any of the tactics I'd previously used to avoid her most troubling move, Waterfowl. Before making that video, I had gotten around Malenia at level 1 by using Frost Pots and the Bloodhound Step. Very viable options, and if you never want to deal with that move, that's a great way to make sure you don't have to. When learning Waterfowl in my previous video, I picked up a few strategies. First, the long range dodge. This is by far the easiest, but it can't be counted on if you plan on playing aggressive, which you should be so you can take advantage of her low poise. For that dodge, you just need to run as far back as possible and then roll forward on the second flurry, then just walk back as she passes over your head on the third. The next one is trickier, the spin. The most consistent way I learnt how to do it is to stay locked on and just strafe, then dodge left at exactly the right time. From there, the second and third flurries are dodged in exactly the same way as the previous method. But if you get caught out mid-attack and you don't have enough time to do that method, you're a little bit stuck. It took me a really long time, but eventually I learnt to unlock the camera so that I could sprint around her, giving me a little extra speed to do the spin method, and that worked, but it took ages to get consistent with it. Since then though, a few commenters pointed out a bunch of other methods, and I've gone back and fought her a few times now. A few in particular pointed out that you can pretty reliably sprint backwards and jump the first flurry, and then continue on the long-range dodge as normal. I managed to get it pretty consistently without much issue, but it only works with some weapons because of the way it shapes your hurt box. If you use a heavier weapon, like a greatsword, your elbows will be higher than your belly button, making this dodge more possible. It's very specific, it's very weird, but it is a great option if you're using a weapon like that. You can also just use Vow, like we did on Rykard. If you use the carry and thrusting shield, you can even put the Ash on that so you don't need to worry about switching to one-handing. You just need to vow the first flurry and then roll as soon as it finishes, and then finish the rest of the dodge as normal. But there is something else that I actually much prefer for this fight, and it's actually made me completely change my mind about Malenia. But before I show you that, let's talk about the rest of her kit. Malenia is weak to fire and lightning. She's also very weak to cold and bleed. I tried out Milady on this fight, and Wing Stance worked extremely well to stay aggressive and quickly jump on top of her. Fighting Malenia requires you to figure out not only when is safe to attack, but also which of her moves are interruptible. And once you figure that out, you can very quickly go from getting your ass whooped to steamrolling her very quickly. And I think that is the most satisfying thing about this fight. It can be a real trap to fear Malenia and hang back so you don't have to deal with a close-range waterfowl, but that can really drag the fight out. You need to find the opportunities to jump on her head even when she's mid-swing. One of the most lethal attacks that she has that a lot of people have trouble with is the flurry. You can parry this move, and it has very generous timing. Parrying against Malenia is a really good strategy in general, but she does take 3 parries to stagger, so it can be a little slow going. If you're not parrying, this move is trickier, but if you're light rolling, it's no trouble. Just spam roll backwards. If you have medium roll though, you will get clipped if you try this. The best option with medium roll is to instead roll forward through the flurry, and then you can get an additional punish. Alternatively, if you have a weapon with range and you're quick, you can just interrupt it. Malenia has 2 different variations of the flurry. Watch out for the final slash. If it's fast, it's not safe and she will follow it up. If it's slow, it's good to go. Give her a big jump heavy. Her kick move isn't interruptible, but it's easy to punish if you just sprint back and then run forward. Just make sure it's a fast attack though, because she will often follow it up. When phase 2 starts, you can just unlock your camera and sprint forward. This reliably lets you just pass right on by. You can take this time to buff up, but what I like to do is keep the Clayman's harpoon as a sidearm and bring it out for some ice spears. This can really start you off on phase 2 really nicely, and if she does it again, she's in real trouble. She'll have most of the same moves as phase 1, but with slight variations. She'll also kick a lot more in phase 2, which can surprise you if you're trying to be aggressive and interrupt her poise. This can make phase 2 feel a lot slower than phase 1 because you can't as easily jump on her head in neutral. A lot of moves that were very safe to punish in phase 1 will now make her jump up in the air in phase 2, and she has a few different things she can do from that position, so it can not only trip you up when you pick wrong, but also stall out the fight. She will often come down and do this delayed rot explosion that can be strafed pretty easily, but the AoE is much bigger than you'd think, so be careful. The other big scary Malenia move outside of waterfowl is the clone move. This is much scarier than it looks, and I really don't think this is that bad at all. What I figured out in my last video is that you can pretty easily avoid it if you just do this. Roll, roll, beat, roll, 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 spam, roll, just keep rolling. The only timing thing you really need is that slight pause on the 3rd clone. Other than that, it's pretty much just spamming left and back. And that worked really consistently except for the few times that I was too close to the wall and run out of space. That's where that strategy pretty much falls apart, but I found if you space yourself well enough, that doesn't tend to happen too often, so I never really felt the need to find a new method. That works just fine, even if it looks a bit messy. And that's pretty much Malenia's kit. She's got some stuff, but the real difficulty comes from that move. So let's talk about it, because I have had a complete 180 about Malenia, and it's all thanks to a little something called the deflecting hard tier. I used this a lot in my DLC run, but I hadn't tried it on Malenia yet, and in my opinion, it really improves the fight. You can absolutely use it without really any sort of timing or skill to invalidate waterfowl. If you just spam the guard button during the first flurry and then roll forward and walk back as normal on the 3rd, it's really not that hard at all. And if you really want to be slick, you can even run in on her on the last slash to deflect for a huge guard counter. The trade-off, though, is that although you won't lose health with a perfect deflect, she will heal. And this creates this really interesting push and pull where you have to decide whether you have the space to dodge it or if you want to be safer and just deflect. And that extends to the rest of her toolkit too. One of my main complaints about Malenia is that even if you put aside waterfowl, I don't find her base kit that fun to dodge in comparison with some of the other bosses. Deflecting her, though, is lots of fun. The guard counters do fantastic stagger, so much so that if you do a charge heavy, followed by a single guard counter right after, is usually enough to stagger her again. I love this playstyle on this fight. It is a revelation for me. It's made me enjoy it so much more. But if this still looks too hard for you, if you've gotten all the way through the game to this point with a little bit of cheese and a cheeky grin, and now you're thinking your luck has run out, I've got news for you, pal. Giant's Hunt. That's right. Malenia can be flipped up into the air. She's not as abusable as regular NPCs, that's probably a good thing, but you can get pretty darn close with the right setup. What you're going to want to do is pick up a greatsword. The Flamberge is the pick I'd recommend because of the native bleed. And what you want to do here is Giant's Hunt into 2 charged attacks, one after the other. And that's going to be a true combo that staggers every single time. Guaranteed. You're going to have a little bit of RNG in phase 2 because she's more likely to randomly kick and get hyper armor from it, and that will make her escape her loop. But this is entirely RNG dependent. If you stick with this strategy and just keep trying to loop and keep your fingers crossed for a good run, it really won't take too long. So if you've been banging your head against Malenia, and believe me, I know the feeling, and you just want to be done with her, this is how you do it. But do at least try the deflecting hard tier if you can, because it really is a game changer. Future onebros, the hardest boss in the game is down. But you're not done yet, because Radahn and Elden Beast aren't slouches. Radahn is one of my favorite fights in the game, and so much of his moveset is reflective of everything that makes Elden Ring combat so great. Radahn is slow, but he has some pretty long combos. He also has some very sudden attacks, which require some pretty fast reflexes. His moves often have a delayed shockwave that erupts from the ground, so it's usually a good idea to stay behind him and wail on him from the back. He has some moves that can and should be jumped for additional punishes, such as this move when he stomps and then jumps into the air. The next big combo to worry about is the 3 big hammer strikes with the large AoE at the end. You can get a quick hit in between the first 2 and then a very big hit in between the second and third. That should be enough to stagger him out of the last AoE if you're lucky. If not, it requires some very precise timing to dodge behind him at the last second to avoid any damage. Radahn is weak to fire damage. You can take advantage of that if you want, but split damage isn't super helpful against Elden Beast, so you may want to avoid building into that. He's also vulnerable to poison, rot, and cold, but I'd avoid that for the same reason, unless you're planning on swapping your weapon for the second half of the fight. Radahn is, however, very weak to strike damage, which is very handy because there are a bunch of strike weapons that are very good for Elden Beast. Speaking of... You may already know this, but with the release of the DLC, you can now use Torrent in the Elden Beast fight. I was so excited when I heard that because I thought that now we have a viable way to consistently dodge Elden Stars at level 1, and kind of, but not really. You need to dodge it in a very specific way, which is the same way that you would do it on foot. You wait a bit, then sprint on Torrent past him to the right, and then as far as you can back. Torrent helps you get into position faster if he starts casting it when you're nowhere near him, but there's a huge downside. Because the danger isn't just Elden Stars itself, but what he's doing during it. If you're on Torrent when he does these golden sword waves, you're in trouble, especially up close. You can dodge these just by running horizontally if you're far enough away, but if Elden Stars is nearby and you don't want to run horizontally because you'll get hit by it or run into an invisible wall, yeah, you're in trouble. Just like Fire Giant and Gaius and any other fights where you can use Torrent, riding around on Torrent for any significant amount of time will get you killed. But it feels worse on Elden Beast because these sword waves are so fast and have such crazy range and tracking. You have to be incredibly fast to dismount and then roll for the whole combo. You should really only be using Torrent for very short bursts of speed, because if you ride around on your horsey for too long, you'll probably be dead. It's a real shame. I was really looking forward to how this would impact the fight. It turns out, really not that much at all. It's an improvement, but it's clearly not designed for this fight, and it often hurts more than it helps. This fight can be a real slog, because a good deal of it is in the randomness of what moves he pairs together with some of his moves that require very specific dodge patterns. You also may not get many opportunities to hit him if he decides to be a real asshole, which he does often. I'm very against the common mindset that combat in Elden Ring is turn-based, but in this fight, it kind of is. You do need to wait for your turn. With the right setup, though, you can get him almost to half health or lower from the very first interaction. Jump heavy to close the distance and then charge a heavy or two. Once he starts to move, run up closer to his side and keep charging heavies. If you time it right, you can get another heavy as he moves away. He has a really, really long time in recovery after a stagger, and you can wail on his chest area for extra damage before you get the riposte. If he's already at half health by this point, he will do Elden Stars pretty soon. He can be staggered out of it, but you have to be really lucky because he needs to be in your face and 1 or 2 hits away from a stagger. Most of the time, he won't be, and you'll have to rush to him to dodge it. The other move you really have to watch out for are the little lasers. You want to look up to get a sense of the direction and then sprint directionally. It's fine on foot or on torrent. On torrent, it's faster, but not recommended because, yeah. Elden Beast has a few get-off-me moves that you really want to respect. Torrent will help you get off him faster and then jump right back in for more punishes. When he brings out the sword to swipe on you, that's your big opportunity to wail on him. It's not a particularly difficult fight. Really, you're just looking for a good run where he treats you nicely. It is, in a lot of ways, a big anti-climax. It is what it is. Sometimes things don't get wrapped up with a pretty little bow. Sometimes it just ends. But it's not really about the end, is it? It's the journey. It's about setting yourself a challenge and then doing all you can to make it happen. Elden Ring is a gauntlet, and to play through it as you have with this tiny margin of error, you've had to play through one of the hardest games ever made, making little to no mistakes. And you did that however way you made it happen. If you're playing along with me, you made it happen. And if you're still thinking whether or not this is possible for you to try, believe me when I say, if I can do it, you can too. And even if this is meaningless in the end, you don't unlock anything, there is nothing extrinsically rewarding about doing this. Setting yourself a challenge with the only reward being the satisfaction of completing it is immensely satisfying, especially when it's really, really hard. It's about proving to yourself that you can do it, and you can do it. But don't rest on your laurels, Tarnished. We still have so much more to go. I'm going to assume if you've made it this far that you already have most of what you need. There is one exception: Scadutree fragments. Can you use them? Absolutely. The only requirement to becoming a onebro is to not level up. That's it. You can also get most of the fragments without killing anything. You can get to level 14 and the upgrade curve is front-loaded, so you will get very strong very quickly. I'm not going to show you where all the fragments are because there are already a whole bunch of guides and maps already online that will show you exactly how to do that. But I will update you throughout this journey so you know when you have the option to pick more up. If you're doing this challenge for the challenge, this may not be the route you want to go down. This can completely trivialize most of the bosses if you optimize, so have a think about how strong you want to feel and do a Scadu hunt if you want to. Once you're done collecting the fragments in the open world, let's take on some early mini-bosses to get even stronger. First up, the Ancient Dragon Man. This is an NPC fight, so Giant's Hunt is the way to go. If you really want to roll through them so you can get to the Jagged Peak and get more fragments, I'm going to recommend something I have completely neglected up until now, and suggest you use a Spirit Summon. The Great Shield Soldiers in particular, these little guys are insane. They can take a surprising amount of hits, even if you don't level them up or use the revered Spirit Ashes, and you can back up an enemy into the wall to keep them stun-locked while you sip your blue drink. These little guys are great. Ring them out, use Giant's Hunt, and this fight will be over pretty quick. Next, head up to the Shadow Keep to fight the Golden Hippopotamus. The Golden Hippo's first phase is real simple, and if you've gotten all the Scadutree fragments, you'll chunk him very hard. He's got some real funky hitboxes, so Ice Spear could be really good to stay away, but where you'll run into a bit of trouble is in his second phase, because his second phase is an absolute mess. The Hippo's quills are really inconsistent, but the good news is that you only need to take him on if you want fragments, and if you've already found a bunch of fragments, his quills won't one-shot you, even at level 1. The Golden Hippo is very weak to lightning, and the water on the ground of the arena makes it even more powerful. I went with the Milady in this fight and used the Deflecting Hard tier to take advantage of his low stance. The Deflecting Hard tier is an absolute menace at level 1 for almost all bosses in this run. This fight is pretty jank, but it's pretty easy if you've been collecting those fragments. Before we jump to the next fight, there is something that you absolutely must do, and that's prepare for the Leda fight. There are a lot of choices to make here, so I'm just going to make it very simple and give you a quick rundown on how to make that particular fight go as easy as possible. Talk to Moore and do a bad thing. Sorry, Moore. Talk to Leda until she decides to kill Hornsent and then assist her to do that. Sorry, Hornsent. Send Arnsbach to the Shadow Keep and get the secret right scroll for him, but do not give the letter he gives you to Freya. That would be terrible. You can actually kill Freya while she's there with a bit of Giant's Hunting to get her sword, which you may want to do because it's pretty cool. Sorry, Freya. For Thiolier, just move him to the Purple Garden and finish his questline after you fight the Putrescent Knight. And that's it. That's all you need to do to give yourself the best chance later on. Now, if you want to continue hunting for Scadooby snacks, what you're going to need to do is head all the way down to the Dark Light Catacombs to fight Jory. Jory's probably a fight you were thinking would be incredibly annoying at level 1, but actually, no. It's not that annoying. It's actually really dull. Jory can be backstabbed, so a Misery Cord infused with fire will absolutely decimate, especially if you pop on Royal Knight's Resolve. Jory can be parried, but honestly, if you do it right, you won't need to. You can actually put Jory in a loop, which can prevent them from teleporting away or summoning any minions. If you're using Blessing, this fight will be done pretty quick, and if you're not, it'll be slow, but very achievable. Once Jory is done, you'll be able to pick up the last fragments you can without fighting any remembrance bosses, and that should put you at Blessings level 17, which is a massive upgrade. Just like in the base game, the restrictions you choose for your run will make a big difference. In order to illustrate that, I've enlisted some help. Let me introduce you first to Garny Gubble. Garny is going to have as many Scadutree blessings as possible at every stage of this challenge. His job is to show you just how strong you can be in this game, even at level 1. But he won't be as strong as possible. So if you think Garny is completely OP for a level 1 run, know that you could be much stronger. There are one-shot builds in this game. The sky is the limit. Next we have the Dirty Birdie. DB is going to completely avoid Scadutree blessings and is instead going to abuse status effects. Status effects are amazing in the DLC, even more so than in the base game. Lastly, me, Gred Glinstone. I'm going to take on some of the hardest bosses in FromSoft history at level 1 with no Scadutree blessings and no status effects. Wish me luck. But before we begin, let's chat about mandatory bosses, because if the challenge that you've set for yourself is simply to beat the DLC at level 1, that's a lot simpler than it was in the base game, because the DLC only has 3 bosses that you absolutely need to take on to roll credits. Those bosses are Messmer, Romina, and Promised Consort Radahn. That's it. So if you're only wanting to roll credits, you can skip to those sections, but You can get Scadutree fragments for fighting other bosses, so you may want to take on more bosses than necessary. For everyone else attempting all Remembrance bosses in the DLC, let's get started. Time for the Divine Beast. If you've gotten all those Scadutree blessings like Garni here, this fight is going to be a piece of cake, but he can be annoying. The Lion is one of those bosses that can have camera issues. He has a big model, so you need to stay at a bit of a distance in order to keep all of him in view, so I highly recommend a weapon with a little bit of range. The Lion is weak to Pierce and Fire. Quilion's Greatsword is fantastic, the Zweihander too. The Fire Knight's Greatsword is also great, but it has some funky stat requirements, so I'd recommend sticking with the Zwei. The Flame Spear Ash of War is awesome on this fight. It leaves an on-hit effect similar to Flame Skewer and sends a long-range projectile which comes in handy when you need to back off. Dancing Lion has 3 phases which he switches between. The normal one he starts in, then a lightning phase, and then ice. In the lightning transition, lightning will strike all around, making it difficult to punish him, but with a long-range Dash of War, you can get some easy damage on him. During the ice phase, he is fair game, charge heavy for a big punish. The Lion will have pretty much the same moveset between all phases, but his attacks will have different properties. The lightning phase is by far the most annoying. He is very weak to Scarlet Rot and Bleed, so a bleed-infused Anspur Rapier can proc damage over time while you run away until he changes into his ice phase. But the lightning isn't too difficult once you know how to deal with it. Your instinct is probably to spam roll as soon as there is lightning under you, but even on light roll, he'll do some attacks which will frame trap you if you roll twice on the lightning. So instead, roll the first and then sprint the second. I found that really consistent. The ice phase is simpler. All you really need to do is jump the icy shockwave or just get out the way. One move that features in all 3 phases is this spinning geyser attack. All you need to do is sprint around in a circle and jump when it approaches, but it can be really annoying if he runs you into a wall, so spacing is really important. That's going to be a common theme in this challenge, so practice it here. Try and keep him in the middle to avoid being cornered, because that will be death. Because he's an early boss, he doesn't have a lot of health, so you can get him down pretty quick even without Scadutree fragments. It's not really until the next boss that you'll start to feel that FromSoft DLC difficulty spike. Rellana is one of the biggest hurdles in this challenge. She has an incredibly fast and diverse moveset, which will take time to learn and dodge reliably, but in my opinion, she is one of the most impressive FromSoft bosses, purely because of the variety of ways that you can take her on. In terms of weapons, I highly recommend choosing a Pierce weapon with a Lightning infusion, or choosing something that can take advantage of multiple status effects like the Anspur Rapier. But separate from weapon choice, there are even more considerations. The Deflecting Hardtier is, of course, a clear favorite in this fight. The damage and stagger potential is incredible, and it keeps you in a firm position in front of Rellana, which gives you the best chance to react to her combo openers. Another option is parrying. Parrying is a great option because Rellana takes quite a bit of time to recover from a parry, so you can get in some free extra hits. But her openers are so fast that parrying can be very difficult. So I'd recommend preparing to roll the first hits and parrying the slower ones, or even pairing it with the Deflecting Hardtier. The moves that you really want to fish for are the ones where Rellana jumps to the side. Those are really safe to parry, and you have a good deal of time to prepare for it. If you don't like using the Deflecting Hardtier or parrying, then the option I recommend most to get your big punishes in is to focus on jumping. Rellana has a ton of moves in her moveset that can be jumped for a big punish. I utilized the Pickaxe. The Pickaxe is a great weapon for level 1 because it does pierce damage while using the Great Hammer moveset, so the jump heavies on this weapon are meaty. I did find with this strategy I got caught out a lot while recovering because of low stamina, so I found the most consistent way to do this was to roll back after a hit to reset. Mid-roll is really tough on this fight, so getting a little bit of distance is really helpful to avoid her many frame traps. When Rellana does her phase transition, it's actually a great opportunity to get a bunch of free damage in, but you do have to watch out because she has a hurt box which can kill you. Either move behind her or just back a little to avoid it. If you do it right, even with no blessings, you can skip most, if not all, of Phase 2. Phase 2 can be tough. She will start Phase 2 usually doing one of two combos. From testing, it seems she will do the magic projectile combo when you are far away, and the fire combo when you are up close, but sometimes she can screw you over and do whatever she wants. I found the most consistent strategy to deal with this is to bait out the fire combo and then back off. It's the easiest to dodge and allows you time to reapply your buffs. Rellana has a lot of the same moves as Phase 1, but some combos will extend and shoot projectiles. Her attacks will have magical property, however, so watch out for chip damage if you're using the deflecting hard tier. The only other thing you really have to watch out for in Phase 2 is the Moon combo, though if you've already done a run of the DLC, you've already probably figured this one out. Jumping is pretty easy once you learn the timing. Rellana, more than most bosses in Elden Ring, is really a test of reflexes. Her attacks are incredibly fast and varied, so reacting in the right way at the right time is essential. Pick one strategy and stick to it so you can build that muscle memory. It's a very satisfying fight to master. We have a few options now that we've taken Rellana out, but if we want to get even stronger, there is a clear choice. When Shadow of the Erdtree released, Gaius was one of the most hated bosses in the game, and I still don't get it. A good deal of the hate seems to come from the charge, but it's really not that bad. This is me with mid-roll. It's not bad. The hitbox is bigger than it looks, and he does track really well with it, but if you dodge in and through him diagonally with good timing, he will go right by you every time. Outside of the opening charge, he will most often do the charge after this big slam attack, so instead of running back, you can strafe to the side or behind him to avoid it easily. The first charge does seem a little trickier to manage for whatever reason. You can jump on your horse to avoid it, but I still think rolling even with mid-roll isn't too bad. If you're really having trouble, the deflecting hard tier is the way to go. It will push you backwards, but if you move yourself in front of the wall left of the entrance, you can push yourself back for an early hit to get you started. Deflecting hard tier is again amazing on this fight. A good deal of the bosses in the DLC have about 120 stance, but Gaius only has 80, meaning only 2 hard tier guard counters will stagger him with a heavy weapon like the Great Hammer. That allows you to be super aggressive and control the fight with ease. I used the Rotten Battle Hammer here on the Dirty Birdie because Gaius is super weak to rot and poison. Although the damage of the weapon itself isn't great, with 0 blessings, most of your damage is going to come from the status effects anyway, and the high stagger lets you keep him stun-locked. Gaius is resistant to slash damage, so be aware of that. What you should definitely focus on is holy damage, because Gaius is really weak to it. Any sacred weapon will pretty much do just fine. Another really weird offbeat option is actually the Sentry Torch. This isn't a meme, it's actually not bad. The Torch weapons got a really weird buff in the DLC and now do insane amounts of stagger really fast. The downside of using a torch to utilize this playstyle is that torches can't do ripostes, but if you carry a Misericord as a sidearm, you can do insane damage very reliably. There are a lot of bosses weak to Holy and Fire in the DLC. I honestly think a torch run with a Misericord sidearm is very weirdly viable. It's not the best choice, though I think any weapon with a Sacred Blade infusion is going to be a better choice, and you can even stay at range and fling these off for massive damage, but I do recommend staying close to him because his easiest moves to punish are triggered at close range. He is faster than you'd expect, so be careful with your punishes that have a long recovery time. His big scary combo is the one where he flings around a whole bunch, and this is actually not that bad at all once you get used to it. Dodge left, right, then dodge in and strafe to his side. In phase 2, he's pretty much exactly the same guy. His moves will do a bit of extra magic damage, so if you're using the deflecting hard tier, you will take a tiny bit of chip, but it's negligible. He does a gravity attack, which can be difficult to manage if he combines it with another attack that requires a specific dodge pattern. You can use your horse to get away, but I found just sprinting did the job 99% of the time. Fighting on your horse in this fight, like pretty much all other fights where you can, is a trap. It's much easier to stay on foot and use the dodge roll or deflect. Overall, Gaius is definitely one of the easier bosses of the DLC, and I honestly don't understand why he gets the hate that he does. He has a very small pool of moves to choose from, and most of them are extremely easy to manage. He's going to feel like an absolute breeze after fighting Rellana. Take all those extra Scadutree fragments if you're using them, and then let's take on the next boss. The hardest thing about Putrescent Knight is getting to him. This run is honestly on par with the Bird Gauntlet in the base game. It sucks. One thing that will really help is Assassin's Gambit. The spell Unseen Form is also a really good option as well. Putrescent Knight himself is really simple. He's really weak to both holy damage and strike, so any strike weapon with Sacred Blade is going to melt him. I use the Celebrant's Skull here, really just because of the low stat requirements. And like Gaius, Putrescent Knight has really low stance, so it can really bully him. The Rotten Battlehammer is also a really good option if you're using status effects, but his weaknesses mean that you can likely do more with raw damage than damage over time. The only benefit with damage over time is that he is sometimes quite difficult to hit. He moves around a lot, and sometimes you can only get a couple quick swings before he rides away. The big scary combo that Putrescent Knight has is where he separates from the horse. You do have to practice a bit so you end up in the best position to maximize your punish at the end of the combo. That worked for me pretty consistently. You don't get a ton of opportunities to get big hits on him, so deflecting hard tier is really great to maximize your opportunities. Another weapon that I think is great here is the Halo Scythe. The Halo Scythe has a projectile Ash of War that can be spammed to do massive damage, even with no Scadutree Blessings. It's really great for getting punishes in where you might normally be unable to close the gap. For this fire move, the flames really aren't too scary. Just make sure to unlock the camera for the second phase when the flames go behind you. But other than that, he will sometimes do a quick flame blast, which he'll follow up with a swipe with his weapon. Outside of those moves, though, there's really no significant differences in phase 2. You should get them before long if you've gotten this far. And that's it for the easy bosses for a little while. We're now going to take on one of my least favorite bosses in Elden Ring. I hate the silly flower man. I hate him because of these damn thorns. These thorns, who knows how they work? I don't get it. There is a follow-up hitbox that stabs out even if you dodge the first, but it only sometimes comes out. I just don't know. Sometimes jumping seems to work, sometimes it doesn't. It's a shit show. Sorry I can't be more helpful on this one, but it's just one of those fights that is a little bit janky. Luckily, he does have very low health. If you have as many Scadutree Blessings as you can at this point, like Garni here, you'll destroy it with Flaming Strike. Definitely use fire here. The tree is extremely weak to it, so not using it does put you at a disadvantage. The only other suggestion I might recommend is Ice Spear. Like dragons, the Scadutree Avatar takes more damage on its head, so you can play more at range and fire these off for pretty respectable damage, but he'll often do his most dangerous and janky moves at range, so that's probably not what you want. He's also weak to poison and rot, but when you could just nuke him down, there's not really much point. Fire is definitely the way to go here. Flame Spear on a weapon that can get a lot of quick hits in, like the Clean Rot Knight Sword, is awesome. The Clean Rot Knight Sword is a fantastic weapon. We're going to make good use of it in this run. It lets you get a lot of attacks off with your weapon buff, so it's really good to make use of Ashes of War like Flame Spear, and the range on the Flame Spear also allows you to get some punishes you wouldn't normally be able to after retreating from the Avatar's Get Off Me attacks. The phase transition charge here has a particular timing, which you can get used to pretty quickly, but if he backs into the wall or hits a tree, you can mess him up and force you to adapt, which can be very annoying. Alternatively, you can use something like Vow of the Indomitable to completely skip it. There is also an explosion that this comes handy in the last phase. It can be really hard to dodge without Vow because of the lasers that follow, and it puts you in a really good position to punish him. Another weird niche option you can use is the perfume bottle, which has a really interesting interaction on this boss. During the phase change animation, you can use the Ash of War Rolling Sparks to use a wall of perfume, which the tree will rush into, doing massive damage. The downside is that the perfume bottle really sucks outside of this interaction, so any weapon with Flaming Strike is going to be way better, so keep it as a sidearm if you want to use this strategy. Overall, the biggest challenge here is overcoming the jank and staying patient. He has a bunch of get off me attacks, so you'll often find yourself running away instead of running towards, and that can be really frustrating, especially when he fires off those thorns. The name of the game is maximizing the windows you have to do as much damage as possible without getting greedy. Getting one Flaming Strike or 3 R1 attacks with a fast weapon is the way to go. There are some moves where that's not possible, so watch out for those and adapt. The jank it's just going to happen. You're going to need to prepare for that, and it will probably be frustrating. This is definitely one of those fights. After the tree is done, though, you'll get to fight another major highlight of the DLC. You know him, you embrace him, the first actually mandatory boss of the DLC. Messmer was the clear fan favorite when the DLC first released, and I can see why. But I was surprised that so many people said that the reason why Messmer was so fun was because he was fair and honest. Messmer is definitely not fair and honest. He is a sneaky, sneaky man. A common complaint that we've all seen about Elden Ring boss design is the prevalence of delayed attacks, but often the most praised bosses in this game are the ones with the most delayed attacks. Messmer has a ton of delayed attacks. I've seen him described as a more honest version. Malenia, I don't understand that at all. Messmer is nothing like Malenia. If anything, I think Messmer is most comparable to Mohg, because in order to punish Messmer effectively, you need to punish him in between his combos as well as after. His fire also has a much wider spread than you'd think, and it needs to be rolled in the same way that you dodge his spear. Messmer can be parried, and you can use the deflecting heart here, but the opportunities for doing so are rare, so I wouldn't encourage it. The tricky thing about Messmer is that he is slippery. Often he will spin around you in combos and you can end up at his back, making it hard to see what the first move of his next combo will be. He'll also throw out fireballs and hide the follower behind the flame. So you need to prioritize vision of Messmer over punish windows, because despite his many delayed attacks, some attacks can be really fast. Messmer is weak to slash damage, and he's also vulnerable to pretty much all status effects, cold in particular. Now that we're about halfway through the DLC, health bars are starting to get pretty big if you're not using Scadutree Blessings. For that reason, stacking status effects becomes important. On the Dirty Bird, I use the Raptor Talons, which have innate bleed with a cold infusion. Raptor Talons are fantastic because they have a hidden passive increase to jump attacks, which stacks with Raptor of the Mists. In Phase 2, you can switch to the Ansper Rapier if the resistances get too high. The damage over time here is really good because he does have very long combos where you can't punish him at all. Messmer is also really weak to Holy in Phase 2, but because he has such a high resistance to Holy in Phase 1, I wouldn't recommend building for it, especially because Phase 2 is actually quite a bit easier than Phase 1. There's really only one combo that requires a specific solve, and that is the big multi-thrust attack that he does in both Phase 1 and Phase 2, and that one's pretty easy to deal with once you get the muscle memory down. What you want to do is roll into him while he's doing the multiple thrusts. For whatever reasons, the attacks will completely miss you from this position, and he will go over your head and slam down while you stand there and allow your stamina to reset. Pretty simple. The other tricky one is the snake combo in Phase 2, but there are many ways to dodge it. The method I stuck to was to run back until the 4th snake, then roll right. Roll the follow-up and he will slam down just like the multi-thrust attack, which you can punish easily. In Phase 2, he has very big punish windows after his snake combos, but some of his punishable combos from Phase 1 will now extend, so be careful. Although Phase 2 is easier, it does require patience, so stay calm and wait for safe moments. I decided to go with Freya's Greatsword in this fight because it's one of the strongest slash weapons without innate bleed, and I didn't want to use status effects. The backhand blades are also fantastic here. While I don't think Messmer is a fair and honest fight, I do think he is one of the best in the game. I love how sneaky Messmer is. He is a snake through and through, which makes taking him down all the more satisfying. In comparison to Messmer, Romina is a pretty straightforward fight. She does have some tricks though. For one, she'll often raise her spear to distract you while her tail hits you in the face. That's a sneaky maneuver, but once you figure that out, it's a non-issue. She also has a bunch of frame traps, so you need to be careful of how you time your first roll on some combos so that you can avoid the follow-up. But the big annoying trick she does is her phase change. She'll do this at a certain percentage, very reliably, but if you are in close proximity when she does it, you're going to die. It can be extremely annoying, but there are a few workarounds. First, bring a ranged option and fire off something once she starts to get to that threshold. The flame spear art on a dagger is really good because Romina is very weak to fire. Keeping it as a sidearm means you can use a heavier main weapon to take advantage of Romina's very low stance. The other option is Ice Spear, which is great because she is very weak to frost. Romina has some very quick long-range options though, so you don't want to fire off these randomly. Instead, you should wait for your punish windows in the same way that you would up close. Romina's second phase is pretty much exactly the same as the first, with the exception of a couple moves which are very simple to dodge. You'll want to watch the butterflies by unlocking the camera and finding a safe space. If you're lucky and find an empty spot near her, you can pretty safely unlock and fire off some more flame or ice spears. Another option to deal with her is one I would strongly recommend if you're having trouble. When you're at the mid-range, she will reliably do one of two moves, this tail move and this move where she jumps at you. If you go for the deflecting hard tier, you can bait out this move for a big punish on the second swipe. This will do a bunch of damage, stagger, and is really safe. But the preferred option is to parry. Romina can be parried, and what's more, unlike pretty much all other bosses in the DLC, she only needs one parry for a riposte. Golden parry is the way to go here. Because of Romina's weird model, a ranged parry is easier to hit. Just bait out the move and you have a very reliable free riposte. If you go for Flame Art Misericord with Royal Knight's Resolve, you can do a parry-only run and demolish her. With full blessings, I got it down in 4 attacks at level 1. So, you got this. Now it's time to burn the mini-erd and head in to a nearer limb. Nearer limb is another zone which is very annoying to traverse at level 1. Unseen Form and Assassin's Gambit are incredibly helpful to get you through here. If you're using Scadutree fragments, you can get the last ones here to max you out. That is as strong as you're going to get, so now it's time to take on Leda and the gang. This fight is an NPC free-for-all, just like the fight before Fortissax, but it is much harder, especially if you're not using Scadutree blessings. But there's a few things you can do to make it easier. In my opinion, NPC fights are fair game to abuse in any way you want. If, like me, you're doing the DLC with no status effects or summons, you can ignore those restrictions here. You may say, I failed the run. I say, shut up. The NPC summons make the fight a lot easier, Ansbach in particular, because his attacks are good for hit stun and they do bleed. Thiolier is weaker, but his poison is helpful and he pulls aggro, which is really what you want. The Great Shield soldiers are amazing here. I used them to keep Dane and Leda busy until Ansbach and Thiolier were summoned, and then I just kept away and either flung ice spears or waited for an opportunity to Giants Hunt. They go down surprisingly quickly with all the status effects, and you can't just wait them out if they've been poisoned. This fight without summons is an absolute nightmare and should only be attempted if you're restricting yourself to a sadistic degree. Otherwise, I'd recommend you do anything you can to bypass it completely. Once you're done, you have a clear path to the last boss in Elden Ring, but before we do that, we have some more optional bosses to take on. I've talked about Bayle a bit previously. I've been pretty down on him because there is one move in particular that he does a whole lot that really sucks. This Fire Breath, it's buggy as hell. What is happening here is actually a problem with how FromSoft has programmed the fire physics. It's not the move itself. The fire bounces. So if it hits some debris or the wall behind you, it can kick back and just hit you randomly. It's really annoying, especially when you're learning. I have, though, found a way to avoid it most of the time. What you want to do is run as close to him as you can and then do a sharp turn. I like to jump for a little bit more distance. This can still occasionally trip you up, but this was the most consistent strategy for me. Even still, he does have some other annoying tricks up his sleeve. In his phase change, what you'll want to do is lock on and run in a circle, avoiding the fire he lobs down, but lightning will also be scattered around. You can't just run into it sometimes. It doesn't happen often, but it can be really annoying when it does. He can also pass behind a rock, becoming untargetable in this section, so if you're not ready for that, your camera can swing randomly around, so be ready for that. The camera is pretty tricky in general for this fight. Using a longer range weapon and sticking at mid-range is definitely advisable, like the Divine Beast. And like the Divine Beast and all other dragons, Bayle is weak to pierce. The Sword Lance is a great weapon, which you can get with Gaius' Remembrance. It has some really funky stat scaling, so putting bleed on it does really big numbers. And Impaling Thrust is a great option to punish safely. The Zweihander is, again, of course, another reliable option. You may be wondering if the Dragon Hunter Great Katana is a good option here, and yes, but it's a little tricky. You could spam the skill, but it takes a while, so you won't get too many opportunities, and it's also a slash weapon, so any attacks that aren't the skill will do less than a pure pierce weapon. With the size of his health pool, I would actually recommend using Ice Spear as a ranged option. That's best in combination with the Bleed Ansper, so you can tick away with dot damage and do some early burst. For this fight, though, I would actually recommend just getting big damage on his head. Getting damage on Bayle's head is a lot easier than other dragon fights because he often ends most combos by putting it within reach. It's much easier than hacking away at his legs. The one exception is this big combo. You'll want to roll and then sprint up to his stump leg and get a big punish. He'll then do one of two things. He'll fly away and do the very annoying fire move, or he'll stay where he is and do a much more manageable fire breath move, which has a great punish window. So you obviously want that one, and I found it was triggered most reliably when I put myself in a position where it would hit me. Once he starts the breath, you can just run out, rebuff, and then run in with a jump heavy to punish. You should experiment with how much you can get away with because he does have some really sneaky fake outs. In Phase 2, things get a lot tougher. Bayle will give you less time to punish because most of his attacks will leave lightning on the ground, so you'll need to position yourself away from the lightning before you can even think about swinging at him. This is especially tough on mid-roll because you'll have that much further to travel before you're safe. There are two big new moves in Phase 2 that are particularly scary. This first one is actually pretty easy to deal with. There will be an initial slam and then after a beat, a huge explosion. You can actually jump the big explosion for a jump heavy, and it's not too difficult to get consistently when you learn the timing. The second is trickier. Bayle will fly in the air again and do two big lines of fire, one left to right and one straight towards you. You can unlock the camera to look at the ground, but I found it wasn't too difficult to dodge it consistently locked, which is easier because you don't have to spin the camera frantically looking for him. It's really just a matter of timing. Wait until this moment, and then dodge a couple times left. Then wait a moment before dodging a couple times. That's all you need to do. It's just a matter of timing because it can be a difficult move to see. Phase 2 can seem like a bit of a slog because it's less safe to punish Bayle. If you have Scadutree Blessings though, you still have enough damage to almost completely skip it, even now. I used the Rusted Anchor with Shriek of Sorrow, and Bayle was pretty simple. Before fighting Midra proper, you'll have to fight Mini Midra, and that can be annoying, especially if you have no Scadutree Blessings. You can just completely bypass this part of the fight by slapping on Giant's Hunt, so do that. Just treat it like it's part of the run back, it's honestly trivial. The real fight is a lot more interesting. Midra, like Bayle, has a lot of fire moves, but luckily it seems to follow completely different rules. It's very simple to roll through a lot of Midra's fire or just strafe around it. Strafing is a really important method to deal with Midra's moveset. It is well and truly a dance. Two combos in particular are really good to watch out for because good strafing will reward you with a really big charged heavy every time, and he does them really often. Midra is weak to slash. The Great Katana is great here because it has a great moveset and native bleed, meaning you can combine status effects like cold for big burst damage. Midra has the highest health bar in the game, but status effects make it pretty manageable. Another good option is the Knight Rider Glaive. The Knight Rider Glaive has a unique charged heavy that is really strong, and considering you have quite a few opportunities to use charged heavies in this fight, it's a really good option. Another great option in this fight is parrying. A bunch of Midra's moves can be parried and they're pretty slow and delayed. He does have some quick moves like the fire and the stab, but the majority of the parryable moves are very easy to react to. I used the Shamshir for no other reason than I like it. Misery Cord will probably give you the best results with this strategy. Midra also has some moves which can be jumped for a good punish, and this move actually has a very unique solve where you can just crouch and avoid it completely. Just make sure you don't charge a heavy too early because he will knock your teeth out. The Phase 2 transition can take a little practice. You want to spin around him a bit and then back off. Practice it so you can run far enough to avoid the explosion, but close enough to move in melee quickly, because this part of the fight is what I had the most trouble with. When the explosion goes off, it can be quite difficult to see what Midra is doing, and he can sometimes fire some projectiles at you very quickly. You really want to get in close fast. In Phase 2, his moveset is pretty similar, but he does have new tricks. This combo looks a lot scarier than it is. The fire on the ground seems like it would kill you, but the hurt box doesn't linger long, so you can roll it without too much trouble. Once you learn the timing, it's pretty simple. The only other move to really worry about is the orb, which he can send out. It's very avoidable once you clearly see where it lands. Just run back to mid-range and you're pretty safe. Midra is a boss that many people love, and it's easy to see why. At level 1, his moveset really shines. Dodging his attacks feels elegant and satisfying. It's a great fight. Meteor is a nightmare. Unfortunately, this is one of the worst fights in this game. It sucks. It's such an amazing design. It's so cool. It's just terrible to play, especially at level 1. To start, Mummy Fingers has some wacky hitboxes. For this combo in particular, you really want to pay attention to the shockwave on the ground. When you're at her side, this move sucks. I hate this. You never want to be at her side for this reason. Always try to stay in front. A good solution for both of these moves, and a lot of her moves in general, is the Deflecting Hard tier. Deflecting Hard tier is the thing you want to use to make this fight as easy as possible. Meteor is weak to slash weapons, so use one with very good stagger, and pop on a bleed infusion if you really want to get this over with. Meteor technically uses gravity damage. I'm not sure if that means that she's weak to weapons like the Onyx Lord's Greatsword. Maybe someone in the comments can confirm. I'm not sure if this was a good option. I'd say probably an infusible weapon with bleed or a more practical Ash of War is better. One option that is actually fantastic is the Falx. Even though it has lower bleed values than a standard bleed infusion, the Ash of War slaps. Normally you don't get too many opportunities to use it, especially at level 1, but if you bait out this helicopter move, you can get big damage off. This is an insane weapon. Whatever you pick, you are also going to need either a sidearm or a shield, because Meteor has a move which does unavoidable damage. This laser. The first time it goes around, it may look like you can just go under here, but you can't. You will die. It's so stupid. I don't know why this hasn't been fixed. I don't imagine it's intentional, but here we are. It's unavoidable. I say unavoidable, but obviously these tools will help you avoid it. And there are other ways too. If you run far enough away, you can avoid it completely. But the really annoying thing about this move is that you don't know when it's coming. But he has a phase change at a certain percentage where you'll need to back off so that you don't get blasted by the AoE like Romina. That's annoying as it is, but it is somewhat predictable. In phase 2, however, the laser works on a timer like Waterfowl. At the start of phase 2, she gets started at any time, and then you have about a minute before she does it again. So you either run out far enough to avoid it completely and then run back in after to attack for 1 minute, or you stay in a bit longer and use something like Raptors or Vow to avoid it. But even then, the timing isn't easy. It's tight. I died a lot trying to get this consistently. It sucks. It just sucks. This shouldn't work this way. If you use the Deflecting Hard tier though, even with no blessings, you will still do a lot of damage. So if you bait out the first laser of phase 2, you'll most likely get it pretty close to death, if not dead, in the time between the next one if you get good RNG. So you'll just need to stay in melee to bait out the moves that are easy to punish. You have to kind of treat this fight like Elden Beast. You want to try nuke Meteor before she does Elden Stars, her version of it, Star Fingers. With blessings, this really isn't that bad. You might not even see the laser at all if you've got a good setup. On my first level 1 run where I used all blessings, I didn't even know what all the fuss was about. With Meteor, I got it down in a couple hours, but this run, it's a nightmare. I know the fuss. Gretty got fingered. Do whatever you can to nuke this boss as quickly as possible and move on. Yuck, ick, goodbye, mummy fingers. That's almost every boss in Elden Ring defeated at level 1. If you've made it this far, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself. You set yourself a challenge, and you have, thus far, succeeded every step of the way. Although there have been hurdles, it has at times seemed impossible. You persisted, and now you're ready to finally close the book on this journey and play something else because you have mastered Elden Ring. There is no challenge that you can't overcome. Well, maybe it's time that you need a little bit of humbling. Promised Consort Radahn is probably the most controversial boss in FromSoft history, and shortly after release, he received some pretty significant nerfs. I fought Radahn at level 1 pre-nerf. He was really tough. The strategy I used was to parry him, and that's the one that I would recommend to any of you who are having a really tough time with him, because now, post-nerf, it's an even better strategy. Some of Radahn's moves are now 33% slower than they were on release, which is crazy because they're still pretty damn fast. That extra time makes parrying a lot easier. Radahn is weak to Sacred in Phase 1, but pretty resistant to it in Phase 2. Phase 1 is about 40% of his health bar, and Phase 2 is much harder, so I'd normally recommend avoiding split damage, but for riposts, split damage is always best, so it works great for parrying. A Sacred Infusion with Sacred Blade will absolutely destroy him, but it won't be easy, even post-nerf. I think Promised Consort Radahn is actually the hardest boss in FromSoft history. I think previously I said that was Malenia, but fighting Promised Consort Radahn at no Scadutree blessings, I think it is Radahn. Radahn is harder. Any way you look at it, this will be hard, you will struggle, it is hard. But I'm going to do my best to get you through it. The best weapon to use against Radahn is anything with pierce damage. Pierce is good in both Phase 1 and Phase 2, so it does consistently good damage the whole way through. Radahn also has a lot of opportunities to attack him in the middle of his combos, so you can take advantage of that extra counterattack damage. He has a lot of punish windows, but the vast majority of them are quite small, so the strategy will be to either get a lot of quick hits on him or to focus on getting really big hits when you can. The Rusted Anchor is just as good on Radahn as it was on him in the base game, and you actually have some really interesting opportunities to rebuff in the middle of his combos. This one in particular is really consistent and will be the source of most of your damage if you use this strategy. Stamina is a massive consideration. Here, regardless of the weapon you choose, you'll be pretty much dodging or attacking at all times. This is a button-heavy fight. Sometimes you may have to forego a punish in order to let your stamina bar refill, especially if you're a big dummy Dumbo like me and you're wearing a hat that reduces your max stamina. Don't be me. The option I strongly recommend is to use either the Ancestor Rapier or the Cleanrot Knightsword. The Thrusting Sword moveset has quickly become one of my favorite movesets in all of Elden Ring. I love faster weapons in Elden Ring because using them makes fights feel much more interactive. If you've ever felt like Elden Ring was turn-based and you never get an opportunity to get a hit in, use a thrusting sword. There is no downtime. You're always either dodging or attacking. Attacks are fast, so you can get in attacks where you couldn't normally. There are two options when you use this playstyle. The first is just spamming with R1s. That'll allow you to do the most damage consistently, and is definitely the option if you want to inflict status effects. The hefty rot pots are also really good if you want to proc rot quickly. In Phase 1, just one hefty rot pot can inflict it. The other option is to go for stagger. There are only a couple times where you can get a charged heavy off with a bigger weapon, but a thrusting sword can do it a whole bunch. That will help, especially in Phase 2, when opportunities to rebuff are rarer. Speaking of Phase 2, 2 is where things really kick off. This is the source of frustration for a lot of players. The light can make it very difficult to see and react. Miquella's hair in particular can be a real problem. I don't personally have issues with light sensitivity, so this isn't as aggravating to me as it is to others. If the light is really annoying, I might consider turning brightness down or playing with your display settings on your TV. I'm not sure, but the majority of the solves for the light lasers are dependent on good positioning. You will start phase 2 directly in front of Radahn, unless, that is, you riposte him. Like a lot of other bosses, if you riposte Radahn in phase 2, you will start phase 2 from where you triggered that riposte, not from the scripted location. And that can really screw you over, because Radahn has some really weird jank when he's at long range. He does have some jank at close range too, even after the nerf, but the main thing is that sometimes he will confuse the moves that he's supposed to do at long range with the ones he does at close range, vice versa. That can really screw you over. Radahn will more often than not open with this big get off me AoE. I've seen a lot of people run back to get distance, but I find moving behind him makes it easier to close that distance. The tricky thing about doing it is that sometimes the moves Radahn follows up with will put you in a tough spot where you have to dodge the move itself as well as the lasers which spawn around you. It can be really random. One consistent strategy is to use Raptor of the Mists. It will allow you to get some extra damage and put you in a really good position. You can even put it on a dagger so that you can keep a more useful Ash on your main weapon. But something neat I found is that I could reliably make him do a different opener if I ran up to him and did a jump heavy on the thrusting sword. I don't know why this move specifically. I tried running attacks on the anchor and he'd still do the AoE, so I'm not sure what triggers it, but for whatever reason, starting phase 2 with a jump heavy on the thrusting sword made him start using his melee moveset, which is what you want pretty much at all times. Positioning is everything in this fight. You have more agency to move him around than you think. The trench in the middle is death. The lasers work really weirdly with this trench and it can bounce up at weird angles. Get out of there. Walls are really bad too. Sometimes you may have to sacrifice a melee position to get him to move closer to the middle of the arena. If you don't, death. Walls are death. This fire move that he does a lot is another consideration. The way that I dodge it is to dodge left twice, but if you move too far out, then Miquella's hair will block whatever he does next. You've got to keep both hands in view. At all times, it's essential. Radahn has 2 moves he'll do with a sword at range. One will fire a projectile, and that can be rolled through after a delay, and the follow-up is usually this left arm swipe, but sometimes can mix it up, so beware. The other is this faster AoE. You can dodge in any direction to avoid this, but watch out if you dodge into him, because he can frame trap you with a follow-up. Dodging backwards is the most consistent, but the trade-off is losing the melee position. At range, he will also do this dash, where he will teleport to you. It takes specific timing, but you'll want to dodge through him. Don't be too committed with the punish, because he can recover pretty quickly from this one. The other one to watch out for at range is this crazy dash move. It looks scarier than it is. You'll just want to sprint to the right, and then roll to dodge the last hit. Anticipate the follow-up. It can be one of any number of moves, so keep a close eye on him. He will do this move in both phase 1 and phase 2, where it'll try and pull you in. Sometimes he can do that in melee. For whatever reason, if that happens, you'll just need to keep sprinting, because the phase 2 version extends forever. Luckily, the solve is simple. At melee, he will also do this dash move. This one's easy, just stay at his feet. There is no hurt box there. He will pass right by, take the opportunity to rebuff, or just sprint towards him to get back into melee range. There are 2 moves which will likely give you the most trouble. The first is this big spinny combo. It's actually pretty simple. He can do this either at range or up close. Either way, it's dodged the same. Dodge the first 2 swipes, then wait a bit. He'll attack a third and a fourth time. You can dodge both at the same time if you time it right. Roll left to avoid the light laser, then dodge his upward slash, and again on his slam. If you dodge it this way, you should be in front of him, which is, again, where you want to be. The other really big scary move is, of course, this meteor attack. This is dodged in a very specific way, which can really mess you up if he does it when you're not in position. What you'll want to do is dodge through him and then run in the other direction as far as you can. I like to do a little bit of a swerve to the right to make the rocks a little easier to dodge, and I dodge with a jump for a little more distance. Then you'll want to move backwards until the last hit, and then roll, wait, roll. This should again put you right in front of him for the punish. The last move to consider is the big explosion. Radahn will land wherever he took off, so what you want to do is run as far away from that spot as possible. No rolling, sprint. Outside of these moves, and yes, I know that's already a lot, but outside of these moves, the rest of his moveset works exactly the same as Phase 1. There will be lasers shooting out everywhere, but they can still be dodged in the same way. So if you can clear Phase 1 consistently, then you really only need to worry about those crazy new moves. And once you get them down, it's really just a war of attrition, but it will take persistence and patience. At the end of my guide for the base game, I said that the Elden Beast fight was a real anticlimax. I feel the opposite way about Promised Consort Radahn. Radahn is the perfect ending to this challenge. His moveset echoes some of the fights you've already overcome. Promised Consort Radahn has a similar dodging rhythm to Godfrey. He has Mohg's fire, and the light pillars themselves work similar to his blood. You need to first learn how to dodge his swings, and then you need to learn the AoE attacks that follow. Like Margit and Morgott, Radahn must be overcome by attacking in the middle of his combos and in between delayed attacks. You need to respect his get-off-me moves and position yourself well to give you the best advantage against his most intimidating attacks. There is also a little bit of jank that must be navigated. It's that little bit of chaos that makes these games what they are. Sometimes they just fuck you. It isn't fair, it isn't honest, it's cruel and evil and just mean. That's what these games have always been. Embrace it. Promised Consort Radahn is the culmination of everything you've learned through your time with this game. At 0 Scadutree Blessings, this is a long fight. It is by far the hardest challenge I've ever undertaken in a video game. There were times where I considered even changing my own restrictions and making myself stronger just to get through it, but I persisted. I persisted because it would be pretty hypocritical to teach you how to do this if I can't do it myself. And so eventually, I did it. And then I did it again, and then again. I won, and it felt really, really damn good. If you've come with me on this journey all the way, and you dedicated yourself to sticking it to the end, keep at it. Let it take time. Winning isn't the real objective here. The objective is to improve. Allow each new personal best to be its own victory, and let the satisfaction from those little victories carry you along to the end. Otherwise, each loss is another roadblock between you and your win instead of another step towards it. You need to lose a lot to win in this game. Accepting that will make it all the sweeter when you finally land the final blow, because it won't be relief that you feel, but pride. Setting yourself a challenge and overcoming that challenge feels good, even when it's some ridiculous thing that you've decided to do in a video game. So let it take time. Good luck, future onebro. Don't you dare go hollow. The rest is up to you. And thank you to IRANDMS, Bender, Wastoid, Blemkin, and a very special thank you to Choking on Razors and Laker, as well as all the other people you see here. If you want to support me, Patreon is the best way to do that. I offer some exclusives for patrons. I've uploaded a compilation of my favorite fights from this series, unedited, without commentary. There are also a bunch of other exclusives like reviews, Let's Plays, and I've also recently started a game club where each month we'll be playing a small indie game together, myself included. And that game is decided from a poll by patrons, and at the end of the month I go live in an exclusive stream where we chat about what we liked, what we didn't, we check out some published reviews, read interviews with the developers, etc. If you want to be part of that, hop on the Patreon. You can join at any tier for the game club. I think it's going to be really fun and good motivation to check out some games you might normally miss. This is the last video in my Elden Ring Level 1 Guide series. I wouldn't have gotten this done if it wasn't for all of your support. I truly mean that. This series was a massive undertaking. This project was actually the reason why I started this channel. I wanted to make videos telling people how to do this crazy challenge. This took me over a year to make. Since starting this project, I have branched out and done some other things. I didn't want to burn out on Elden Ring and start to resent it and this challenge and myself for deciding to make a guide, so I have worked on other projects to break it all up. I've really enjoyed doing that, and ultimately that has dictated what I believe to be the future of this channel. It is much more interesting for me to dig into ideas and the psychology of why we play games and how they make us feel than it is to say, this is how you dodge this one attack. I know there are probably a bunch of you out there that watch my videos because of my guide content, but I'm sorry to say this is most likely going to be the last of its kind that I'll do. I'm sorry to end on a bit of a bummer, but I wanted to tell you straight. I do like setting myself weird challenges. I like learning new things. I don't see that stopping anytime soon, but I have a broad variety of interests and I get bored easily. I need to have the freedom to make videos about what I'm interested in rather than what I feel my audience wants to see, because if I don't, I will start to hate doing this. I'm still only a small channel. It's a labor of love, definitely not a cash cow, so it has to be fueled by passion and not demand. I'm really appreciative to all of you who have gotten me this far in the internet video business. If you're only here for my guide videos, I apologize, and I hope you understand. And I hope you give my other stuff a chance. I think it's good. Most of the time I talk about common topics in video game discourse and use newly released games in discussion as an example. So even if you aren't particularly interested in any one game I'm talking about, there's every chance that I'll actually talk about it very little in the video, so give it a shot. If you find it pretentious and boring, I don't blame you. Appreciate you for trying. Thank you to all the lovely FromSoft cultists out there that have been with me from the beginning and cheered me on. I'm so grateful to the community for embracing me and hearing what I have to say about this wonderful game. Good luck if you're trying this challenge for yourself, and tell me how it goes in the comments. I love hearing from people who took on this challenge because of me and followed it through to the end. That warms my heart. Thank you. Please have a great day.
You're beautiful.